Hey guys. You are watching your anime world. How are you all? Please support to subscribe this channel for watching new interesting stories. So in this video, we will see what if Deku's breakup with Bakugou changed everything. Here is short summary. Years after Bakugou and Midoriya break up, when Bakugou isn't able to give Midoriya the dedication in their relationship he wants, Kaminari and Bakugou start to struggle in their relationship for the same reasons. But before we start, if you want more stuff like this, then be sure to subscribe and like this video. And if possible, share this video with your friends. Now let's start the story. Bakugou and Deku had started dating not long before they graduated. It was a new, gentle thing while they were in school. Once they were released out into the big, wide world of heroes, it became less gentle. Bakugou still had a dream. He wanted to be the #1 hero, and nothing in the world was more important to him than that. Midoriya had, after the war, decided that while he still wanted to strive to be #1, he knew that he needed to balance that goal with the rest of his life. That meant making the time for friends, family and loved ones. And one of those loved ones was Katsuki Bakugou. It caused a lot of arguments between them. Midoriya wanted more commitment from him, and Bakugou wanted nothing more than to focus on their dreams together. He wanted Midoriya to be just as driven as he was for that top spot. Their relationship lasted only a few months after graduation. It had been so new to them already, and broke under the strain. It took a very long, very painful year before Bakugou let go of the hurt and anger towards Deku. After long conversations with Kirishima, and a lot of reluctant soul-searching, he even reached out to Midoriya and apologized. Ever since that apology, they had been close friends again. Maybe not as close to Bakugou as the Baku Squad was, but more than any of their other former classmates. Kaminari sometimes joked that they skipped an important step, went from enemies to lovers without really doing the friends thing in the middle. Bakugou disagreed. He just thinks Deku and him were not meant to be. Everyone always assumed that Kirishima was the only person able to get into Bakugou's personal space without him complaining. The first person most people ran and hid behind if they poked at him too much and made Bakugou angry was always the tall red hero cut from stone. And it's true that Kirishima was Bakugou's first real friend in high school. He had decided on day one that they were going to get along, even if Bakugou was making it difficult for him. Though in the end, Bakugou could never be more grateful. Because once the happiest student, the personification of sunshine, was his friend, everyone else just assumed they could be too. It took one person giving him the time of day as an equal, even when he was shouting at and belittling everyone, for the class to realize that Bakugou did not mean most of the insults he threw at them. But what the Class A group does not realize is that Kirishima is not the only person that is able to get close to Bakugou without consequences. And honestly, Kirishima isn't even the one taking advantage of the special treatment the most. Because Bakugou is weak to golden eyes and mischievous smiles, to quick, witty remarks and faint electric shocks. Kaminari Denki had stormed into their friendship with a single-minded focus. Once he witnessed how harmless Bakugou could actually be, he wiggled his way in alongside Kirishima and latched tightly to him. He hung around the two of them until he was a permanent fixture in his life, until Bakugou started looking for him when he was not there. After Deku broke up with Bakugou, both Kaminari and Kirishima had become more frequent fixtures in his day-to-day life. It was rare for him to go more than 2 days without spending time with one or both of them. Whether he was being dragged to the gym with Kirishima, playing video games or watching movies with Kaminari, he was rarely left to his own spiraling thoughts. After Bakugou and Deku became friends again, Kirishima had calmed down on how often he forced Bakugou to come out of his shell. They still went to the gym together almost daily, but the frantic, worried undertone to Kirishima's actions had lifted. He was no longer worrying for his friend constantly, and it brought a levity to their interactions that Bakugou had not realized he was missing until it was back. Kaminari, on the other hand, only seemed to hang out with him more after the makeup. Like he had been holding himself back while Bakugou was still upset and struggling from the breakup, and now that things were normal again, he was able to bother him as much as he wanted. But Bakugou truly let Kaminari get away with too much, things he would never let anyone else do. From innocent things like poking his shoulder while he teased him to more meaningful things, like showing up to his apartment unannounced, or falling asleep pressed up against him during movie nights. And once Kaminari realized that Bakugou would let him get away with those little things, it began to get more elaborate in nature. Kaminari started joining them at the gym, working mostly on his cardio since his quirk was less about muscle mass. But Kirishima would succeed in pulling him off the treadmill sometimes to go through a more well-rounded routine, on as regular a schedule as he could convince Kami to do. At the start of him going to the gym, Kaminari would wear typical things guys wore to the gym, loose shirts and shorts. The more he noticed people staring at him appreciatively, and the more his confidence grew alongside his ass. Thank you, Kiri, for including so many squats in his routine. He started to get a bit daring with his clothes. A few pairs of tight shorts here, some revealing tank tops there, until almost his whole gym wardrobe walked straight out of the horny marketing schemes for women's skin-tight athletic wear. And Bakugou couldn't even complain about it, because he was too busy getting an eyeful. Once Kaminari reached peak confidence in his body, Bakugou was sure he was going to have to watch from the sidelines as he hooked up with the guys at the gym checking him out. Kaminari was a hero after all, and that made him celebrity-like in the eyes of the public. Bakugou and Kirishima started taking bets on what guy would work up the courage to shoot their shot with the electric blonde each day, and unfortunately Bakugou won more often than not. He could recognize the looks in their eyes, because he was wearing the same damn look most of the time. The most surprising part, however, was the fact that Kaminari never accepted any of their advances. He always seemed flustered by and pleased with the attention, sure, but he never accepted their numbers, and never let anyone take him home. And the more other men approached him, the more Kaminari seemed determined to touch Bakugou. Kirishima was having a field day making fun of him with the way Kaminari would walk over and touch Bakugou on the arm, or squeeze past him in the locker room, ass brushing against him, and watch as Bakugou completely blue-screened. The most memorable occurrence was when he was mid-sip from his water bottle and Kaminari bent over in front of him to pick up the towel he conveniently dropped, bending at the waist and slowly raising himself up straight, back arched and ass popped. Bakugou had completely frozen, eyes glued to his backside in a haze as water rushed past his lips and down his shirt. Kirishima took pity on him though and righted the water bottle quickly, passing him a towel with a sympathetic smile. Bakugou was tempted to tell Kaminari to knock it off, but the radiant smile he shot Bakugou's way every time he noticed the effect he had on him was so beautiful, he couldn't bring himself to ask him to stop teasing. In addition to the gym shenanigans Kaminari would pull, Bakugou was also pulled into his orbit when the Baku squad would go out dancing after they all turned 20. It wasn't his favorite thing to do, but he would be lying if he said he didn't go solely to see Kaminari. Because Kami never failed to dress up. Tight pants and flowy shirts, or skirts and mesh shirts showing off all his lean muscles and slim waist. At first Bakugou was worried that he would have to watch his friend leave with other people, like he had worried at the gym, but the first time he joined them he realized that he had nothing to worry about. Kaminari stuck to his side like glue. The major issue with that was that Kaminari loved to dance. So the whole time he stuck to Bakugou's side, he was whining and begging him to go and dance with him. At first their friends warned Kami to be careful, and to quickly hide behind Kirishima for bothering him. But Kaminari did no such thing, and continued to cling to his arm, staring up at him with a wide, happy smile and those big, golden eyes, and next thing Bakugou knew he was allowing himself to be pulled to the packed dance floor. Their friends learned not to worry about Bakugou exploding Kaminari out of the clubs after that initial stunned silence. The dancing was going to kill Bakugou one day, he just knew it. At first he had been uncomfortable, not really knowing what to do with his hands, or how to move to the music. But Kaminari led him, grabbing onto his hands and helping him to move through the crowd. He never let go of him, making sure that at all times some part of them was touching. Eventually Bakugou took the hint and would hold onto Kami's waist while the shorter boy danced his heart out. It couldn't be good for Bakugou's health, feeling the way Kaminari moved in his hands, and once the night got late enough, against him. Their friends never made a comment about it, and Bakugou knew that the only thing stopping them was Kirishima. He owed his friend way more than a few beers, but Kiri never had to pay for a drink when Bakugou was with him. And even though both of them could tell how affected they each were from the dancing, Bakugou would bring Kaminari home, right up to his front door, where they would chat for a moment before Bakugou left. Once, Bakugou had gotten close to confessing. Kaminari had asked if he wanted to crash on his couch, and he had reached his hand out to brush the hair out of his face. Kaminari's lips parted in surprise, but he tilted his face into Bakugou's hand. "Katsuki?" he whispered. A loaded question. He brushed the pad of his thumb over Kami's lower lip, pressing lightly and watching the way his lipstick smudged, mesmerized by the plump softness. Then Bakugou was taking a step back, voice quiet as he whispered, "Have a good night, Denki." It was such a simple touch, barely any kind of contact between the two of them, but Kaminari looked absolutely wrecked, hands grasping at the door frame as if it was the only thing holding him upright. His voice was breathy and hoarse as he whispered back, "Good night." As soon as the door shut behind him, Bakugou could hear the squeal from his friend, and smiled the whole way home. At 21 years old, Bakugou was sure that Kaminari's presence had squeezed inside his chest so tightly that there was a perfect indent in his heart, the shape of Kaminari's smile, a special place for the light and happiness he gave off to coil up in when he was near. And when Kaminari was not around, on the nights that the group was not getting together or they didn't bump into each other on patrol, Bakugou could feel that indent in his heart pulsing. That empty space waiting for the next moment he saw Kami again, constantly aware of its existence, a low pulse thrumming under his skin and an undercurrent to every thought, every breath. It didn't hurt, necessarily, it was just always there. His thoughts kept coming back to the empty spot next to him where Kaminari wasn't standing, his mind running fingers over the space in his heart and thinking of the person that fits in there like a puzzle piece. It was something he could focus around, like trying to navigate the kitchen to cook while a cat was ducking and playing around his legs. He could go about his day, patrolling and fighting villains, grocery shopping and cleaning his apartment. But when he was not distracted by other things, the empty space was at the forefront of his mind. It became so distracting that he started inviting Kaminari over more often, without the rest of their friend group. At first he felt like he needed the perfect excuse to have Kaminari over, like he found a movie he thought he would like, or a new recipe that no one else would eat with him. Eventually, once he realized that Kaminari never questioned him, didn't demand a reason to hang out and never turned down the offer, he just invited him over with no real plans. And when Kami would get there, they would order takeout or cook together, then curl up on the couch and watch shows together. The space between them shrunk the more they hung out. They started out sitting on opposite ends of the couch, and one day Bakugou just thought it and sat directly next to Kaminari, throwing his arm across the back of the couch behind him. This seemed to be the last thing Kaminari was waiting for, because after that he became shameless in the way he sought out physical contact with Bakugou. He would curl up into his side on the couch, sometimes throwing his legs over Bakugou's lap to get closer. Even in public he started to gravitate to him, leaning into his side or reaching to hold his hand while they walked. Their friends started to tease them gently for it, wary of embarrassing Bakugou too much or ruining whatever was growing between them. Kaminari always responded with a smile, and if they were next to each other he would be sure to reach out to hug him, grabbing his arm or wrapping his hands around his waist. Bakugou never stopped him, red in the face as he was. The most surprising thing was that if Kaminari didn't seek out Bakugou's touch, then Bakugou would go to him for it. He started putting his arm around his shoulders or waist, reaching for his hand or brushing his hair out of his face. At the arcade, he would lean over Kaminari and rest his chin on his shoulder, watching whatever game he was kicking Ciro's ass at. It all culminated one night after a Halloween party that Jiro and Yaoyorozu threw, when Kaminari asked Bakugou to come inside and watch a few scary movies with him before the spooky season was officially over. Bakugou agreed easily, wanting any excuse to stay near him and gratefully accepting the offer. While Kaminari was in his room changing out of his extremely provocative nurse's costume, Bakugou, who had opted for no costume at all and took no shit for it, made himself comfortable on the couch and pulled up the first scary movie he could find. And when Kaminari came back in from changing, wearing an oversized shirt and baggy sweatpants covered in paint stains from the time he helped Kirishima repaint his apartment, Bakugou couldn't help but think that Kami was beautiful no matter what he was wearing. His body had reacted strongly to the tight spandex of his costume earlier, but his heart swelled at how comfortable Kami was to be open and relaxed around him, dressed cozy and looking so vulnerable. Stripped down to the very core of himself, something he only did around Bakugou. And as they curled up together under a soft blanket and watched the movie, Bakugou knew that Kaminari was someone so important to him. And if everything he had seen was true, then he was just as important to Kaminari. So it didn't take much courage at all to bring his hand up to Kaminari's chin and pull him closer, golden eyes wide with surprise when Bakugou pressed his lips to his cheek in silent question. And the happiness he saw spread across Kami's face was breathtaking. The beat they shared was soft and slow, gentle in a way that Bakugou hadn't been expecting but couldn't get enough of. Bakugou stayed that night, curled up in bed with Kaminari, holding him close. In the weeks that followed, the two of them started going on actual dates instead of just hanging out at their homes. Seeing movies, eating at nice restaurants, going out dancing, just the two of them. Their friends noticed, and Kirishima didn't hold back on his pride in Bakugou. It took no one by surprise when Bakugou asked Kaminari to be his boyfriend. But the conversation was a difficult one for him. "Kaminari, can I ask you something?" Bakugou whispered, lips pressed to the space behind his ear. Kami hummed in response, grabbing the remote to pause the documentary on jellyfish that had been on in the background, shifting in his seat to give Bakugou a happy smile. "Fire away, Blasty." He huffed a laugh, bringing his hand up to tangle it with Kami's smaller one. "I just wanted to tell you that I like you so much. And I want us to be more than just friends." Kami sat up, a sparkle in his eyes and lips spread wide in a smile. "But I also wanted to make sure you know that my dream to become the #1 hero is still more important to me than anything." His friend's smile faded to something smaller, but lost none of its warmth. His free hand came up to brush across Bakugou's cheek. "Your drive and determination are part of the reasons I like you so much, Katsuki. I'm not going to ask you to stop all of that just to give me all your attention." Bakugou was hesitant to reply, but asked anyway. "You're sure you won't mind me having other things as a priority? I spend a lot of time training and taking extra patrols. I take almost every overnight mission they offer me." Kaminari laughed lightly, leaning his head against Bakugou's shoulder. "Well, I plan to work hard, too. I want to work a whole bunch now while I'm young and in shape, so I can save up as much as I can for when I'm old and don't want to work as hard. So no, I won't mind. We are 21 years old, Kaminari. You have a long way to go before you need to start worrying about your health stopping you from working. You say that now, but time moves fast, and when I start beeping about my aching body at 30, you better be gentle with me." Bakugou laughed at that, bringing his hands up to tickle at Kaminari's exposed side, making him shriek in surprise. The laugh that spilled from his lips, and the light electric shock he gave off under the assault of tickles, made something warm spread through Bakugou's veins. Once they calmed down, out of breath and smiling ear to ear, Kaminari pressed a beep to his lips. "I don't need all of your attention right now. I know how you feel about me, and I know your love for your work doesn't diminish it." Bakugou took a shuddering breath. He had been expecting this conversation to be much more difficult, based on past experience. He tightened his grip on Kaminari, burying his face in his shoulder as his eyes burned with unshed tears. Fingers combed through his hair gently, lips pressing softly against his temple. "The only thing I will ask of you more than what we have already is to stay faithful. This is exclusive. I don't want to be sharing you with other people." Bakugou pulls back, hands sliding down Kaminari's back, slipping under the edge of his shirt and to the warm skin of his waist. "That won't even be an issue, Firefly," Bakugou whispers in his ear before beeping him breathless. He had expected to enjoy it when they finally were more intimate with each other, especially after all of the tension that had been building between them for so long, but Bakugou was still surprised that the sex was some of the best he ever had. So good to the point where he started craving it constantly, thinking about it nearly every moment he had the freedom to stop and think. And Kaminari must have felt the same, considering how often he initiated it as well. Bakugou had never expected to laugh so much while being intimate with someone. Not mean laughter either, but soft, gentle giggles. Feeling giddy and happy, just excited to be close to one another. Like when Kami would try to do something sexy and tip over, collapsing onto the bed when he loses his balance, and Bakugou laughing with him, and pulling him closer to taste his smile. Lips pressed together but grinning too much to really be able to call it a beep. Asking Kami to move in with him was one of the easiest decisions he ever made. It came to him one night while he was watching a stupid show on TV and just thought to himself, Kami would have laughed so hard at that. And then he wondered to himself why he didn't just invite Kami over right now. He had a drawer full of clothes in Bakugou's bedroom already. For those days he stayed over late and got too tired to go home before work the next day. Then Bakugou wondered why Kaminari didn't just move all of his things there, and then it clicked. He could just ask Kami to move in with him, and the thought of waking up every morning next to him, of the easy back and forth banter and soft laughter as they navigated around each other, sharing space together. Of curling up at night to watch movies and not worrying about either of them needing time to get home, cutting short the time they got to spend together. Being able to reach out and touch him whenever he wanted, holding him close under the comfort of their blankets at night, pressing soft beepies to each other as they drifted off to sleep. Soft, gentle, domestic. All things Bakugou didn't even realize he would like or want until they were right within reach between him and Kaminari. And as soon as the idea was in his head, Bakugou didn't want to wait a single moment more to make it a reality. All that night and the next morning the idea was running through his mind, nervous energy crawling under his skin. Come that afternoon, when he was with Kaminari at his smaller apartment on the outskirts of the city, he brought it up. And since it was an important conversation, he went into it with all the delicacy that he could muster. "Hey dunce face, you know we could save money if you sold your place and moved in with me." Kaminari blinked up at him from his space curled up on the couch. His lover's eyes ran down Bakugou's body before trailing back up to his face. He was dressed in sweats and a ratty gym tee, hands empty and arms crossed defensively. Kami blinked at him again before turning slowly back to his book. "Baby, I'm gonna need you to try that again, with a lot more romance." A pregnant pause while Bakugou mulled that response over. It wasn't a no. Kami turned a page. "Can I have a few hours to prep?" The electric blonde glanced over his shoulder at him, eyebrows raised. "Sure?" Bakugou nodded, beeping the top of Kami's head before grabbing his wallet and keys as he walked out of the apartment and into the rainy day. Something romantic. For Kaminari. To ask him to move in. Well, first he was going to need a spare key for him. There was a local hardware shop that could do that. But other than that, he didn't know what to do to romance him with the question. He makes his way to the store and is greeted by an elderly woman who recognizes him as Ground Zero. When he asked for a duplicate of his key, her husband came out from the back and asked for it while she rang him up. The key was the bare minimum needed. Bakugou realized. He would need to get him other stuff too. Flowers? Chocolates? Those were very Valentine's-wise shit to get. Before he spent too much time thinking about this only to get nowhere, he decided to make a call. The phone only rang twice before a chipper voice answered. "Hey Kachan. I asked Kaminari to move in with me but he told me to ask again with more romance." There was a pause. It stretched on for so long that Bakugou pulled the phone away from his ear to make sure the call hadn't disconnected. "Deku? You just spit it out at him, didn't you?" His longest friend sounded so unimpressed. "How else am I supposed to say it without just saying it? I bet you insulted him at the same time." "Oh, off. Oh my god, you really did, didn't you?" He could hear the bewildered amusement Deku was trying to conceal. "Either help me, or I'm hanging up and never asking you for help again." "Okay. Alright. Don't hang up, Kachan." A real laugh that time, but not a mean-spirited one. Bakugou felt his shoulders relax and a small smile pull at his lips. "So first you need to get him a key, so he can actually get in the door. Getting him some sort of cute keychain could help add something to it, make it more personalized?" "Okay. Keychain, got it. What else?" "Well, flowers never hurt. And neither does something more personalized, to help him feel at home once he moves in. Something to signify that it's no longer your space alone, but somewhere that you both share." "That's vague," Bakugou sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Well yeah, it could be anything for you too. For example, when I ask Rody I plan on getting a huge picture frame and filling it with lots of photos of us as well as his siblings, and I'm gonna display it right on the wall when you first walk in. You asking Rody to move in sometime soon, nerd? No, but unlike some people, I like to plan in advance." Bakugou grunted at that. "Okay, so get him something sentimental that will make it feel like shared space, not just mine." "Sure. That's easy." He thought for a while, watching the woman behind the counter check out another customer while a machine in the back whirred to life, cutting out the new key for Kami. He tried to think of the things Kami enjoyed doing in his free time. They went out dancing with their friends a lot, but that didn't lend to many gift ideas. Whenever he came across any sort of ocean-related documentary on the TV, he would be fixated immediately. The first time Bakugou witnessed it, it freaked him out a little. He had never seen Kaminari sit so still and quiet for more than 5 minutes, so witnessing a full hour of it was unsettling at first. Eventually he became fond of the fascination, but when he asked if Kami wanted to go scuba diving with him, he learned that he was actually terrified of all creatures of the ocean. He was just fascinated from a distance. It wasn't a word Bakugou used to describe anyone often, but it was really cute. Made him want to bite Kaminari's cheek. But again, not something that would translate well to a gift. If they got any pet fish, it would probably be a death sentence for them anyway, given how infrequently the two of them were home. Kami also liked to get together with Juru and Fukuyami to play music, and the three of them have even played at bars before for a small, drunk crowd. Bakugou went out to see them every time if he wasn't on patrol or a mission, and Kaminari always looked so happy up there playing with his friends, colored lights making his hair around him glow like a goddamned halo or some shit. Not to mention he always wore tight pants and cute makeup on those nights. Bakugou would only miss that for something important. Wait a second. Displays for his guitars on the wall? After waiting patiently for Bakugou to think this through for so long, there was a gasp on the other end of the phone. That's a great idea. You can do it in the bedroom or the living space, maybe spread them out throughout the apartment. I know he's got quite a collection at this point. Bakugou nodded, picturing it. Then he realized Deku can't see him and said, "Okay, I can do that. But I don't think I'll be able to do that until his guitars are actually moved over." "That should be okay. It doesn't need to be ready when you ask him to move in. That can wait. The rest should be good for now to get him to say yes. Maybe dress up." He glanced down at his ratty outfit and flinched. "Yeah, I can run home and change. Please tell me you're at least wearing jeans right now and not sweatpants." Deku was met with silence. A heavy sigh. "You are so lucky Kaminari likes you enough to let you try again." "Yeah, whatever, nerd. I would have gotten there eventually on my own. You just sped up the process." "Careful, Kachan, that sounded dangerously close to a thank you," he growled, and his childhood friend laughed. "Well, I've got to go, good luck." "Ha, I don't need something as shitty as luck." He rubbed the back of his neck and grit his teeth. "But thanks for your help, Deku." He could hear the smile in Deku's voice as he said, "Anytime, Kachan. Don't forget to let me know how it goes. Bye." The line went dead just as the elderly man came out from the back with the key in hand. "Thank you. Do you guys also carry keychains?" He was directed to a wall in the back where there was a small selection. The first one he grabbed was easy. A Ground Zero keychain, his logo with a small explosion. Not far from it was a charge-bolt one, which he picked up and decided to get for himself. The one more difficult to get was something sappy. There were frankly too many options that said, "Home Sweet Home," or "First Home," and every variation thereof. He settled on a little silver house that said, "Home," in a fancy script. It was small and discreet, and wouldn't clash with the colors of the Ground Zero merch. Once the woman rang up those, he quickly attached them to his and Kami's keys before finding an open flower shop and asking the woman to get him a happy bunch of flowers, preferably with yellow and orange. Call him Ing Sappy after getting the keychains, but maybe having their hero colors together would make Kaminari happy. Last was dressing to impress. But before he went home though, he swung by the store to get the makings for a fancy dinner, so he could cook for Kaminari after he, hopefully, said yes. Finally he was standing in front of Kaminari's apartment in a full suit, food, flowers and all. The suit felt a little bit tighter across his shoulders and arms than it had the last time he had worn it, probably from the recent changes in his workout routine to really emphasize his upper body strength. Whatever, when he sent a picture to Kirishima and Deku for their approval, they had given an encouraging response. Kirishima asked what he was dressing up for and Bakugou told him to off. He's sure that Deku will call and fill him in anyway. He took a deep breath and knocked. The nervous pattering in his chest stopped as soon as that smiling face greeted him, moving to the side to let him walk in. "Am I still allowed to try again? I brought the romance with me this time?" Kaminari laughed at that. I can see the romance oozing off of you now. Yes, you can absolutely try again. But I feel like I'm underdressed now. Bakugou ran his eyes down Kaminari. He was wearing one of Bakugou's shirts, black with an orange X across the front. His leggings were tight, and he cheekily lifted the shirt in the back and peered over Kami's shoulder to see his ass perfectly outlined in them. You look good to me, he said as he let go of the shirt and took a step back, smirking at his lover. Kami blushed prettily at that, but playfully smacked Bakugou on the arm. He could tell he was pleased with the attention, and knew that compliments could get him everywhere with the electric blonde. He grabbed the flowers from where he had left them on the countertop and handed them to Kami, who took them with a beaming smile. You've been a part of my life for so long that it doesn't feel like a big jump to move in together. It isn't something new and exciting. Is that supposed to be a compliment? Kaminari asked, his smile turning sassy as he brought the flowers up to his face to smell. His eyes fluttered closed and he hummed happily. Bakugou shifted forward and those stardust eyes opened to look at him, sparkling with mirth. It's because I already know what to expect. I know the ratty clothes you wear to bed when no one else but me is around. I've already seen you with those weird green face masks you do, and I've heard you sing in the shower 100 times. I know exactly what commitment I'm asking for, and what I'm walking into with you. The good and the bad, including the hair you leave in the drain in the shower, and the way you'll leave the dinner dishes in the sink because you think it's easier to do them in the morning. Hey, but I also know that I love the way you hum to yourself when you fold laundry, how you'll dance around while you vacuum, and your cute sneezes when you dust. I know how soft you look when you're completely relaxed and comfortable in your space, the way your nose scrunches when you read, and how you always make sure there are snacks stocked for all of our friends that may or may not be stopping by. I've seen the way you cry at sappy movies, or shout at sports on the TV that you know next to nothing about. I know all your favorite candle scents, and that at the end of stressful days saving lives, you like to unwind with a bath bomb and a glass of wine. He placed a hand on Kaminari's cheek, the other coming up to gently cradle his shoulder. He could see and feel the uneven breath Kami took, the exhale shaky with emotion. I know that you never fail to see when I'm tense from work, and the way you'll rub my shoulders or give me a massage on the bed is better than any professional I've ever been to. I know that the greatest sleep I ever get is when I have you in my arms, and the best days always start when you're the first thing I see when I open my eyes. The flowers in his lover's hands are trembling now, and he can see the emotions flying across his face. The happiness, the longing, the love. He knows if he stopped now his answer would be a yes, but now that the words are coming out, he still has so much he wants to tell him. So much that Kami deserves to hear from him. This isn't new and exciting because it's familiar and comforting. Having you in my life has been a constant for so long that I know confidently and with no second guessing that I can rely on you, both when I'm being ground zero and when I'm just Katsuki. You're always there with your warmth, your humor, and that heart of yours that's almost too big for your body. That earns a wet chuckle from him. I love you, Denki. And that earns a gasp. Neither of them have said that yet. Kaminari probably expected to be the first to say it, and honestly, with how difficult it is for him to talk about his emotions normally, Bakugou did too. But he's been thinking about it for so long, and now that he's finally putting his feelings into words, he knows that it's true. And someone as radiant as Kami, someone so important to Bakugou that means so much to him, deserves to have those words said to him first. I love you so much that at this point, home to me is wherever I get to be with you. When I picture where I want to be at the end of the day, where I want to be years from now, I always picture you. Kami had tears in his eyes, and he hugs the flowers to his chest like they're the most precious thing in the world. Will you please move in with me? Kaminari nods rapidly, and quickly places the flowers back on the counter before launching himself at Bakugou. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. He's openly sobbing now, shaking his whole frame as Bakugou holds him tightly. He blinks and is surprised to find his own tears spilling over, and buries his face in the crook of Kami's neck. God, I love you so much, Katsuki. So much. Bakugou's hands start to shake, and he feels like something finally slid home inside his chest. Like his whole life something was positioned slightly off-center, and hearing Kaminari say that he loves him made his whole world shift back into place. He can't stop the tears now, and a small, broken sound slips out. Kaminari pulls back and brings his hands up to his face, running his thumb under his eye to catch some of the tears. I have never felt so safe and loved more than when I'm with you. And yeah, being wrapped up in those big, strong arms is the best sleep I get, too. There is nothing I want more than to spend my days with you, fall asleep next to you, and wake up next to you to do it all over again. Their lips met for a cheery beep, and Bakugou reached into his pockets and pulled out Kami's key. When he held it up for him to see, he could tell the moment he recognized the Ground Zero merch because his eyes sparkled with mirth and an unrestrained laugh slipped past his lips against his will, a hand coming up to cover his mouth. It was one of Bakugou's favorite sounds. "Will you let me cook for you, and then we can celebrate?" Bakugou whispered, lips brushing against Kaminari's ear. The shorter man hummed, arms sliding up around his neck. "How about we eat later and celebrate now?" "I could be convinced," he whispered, fingers sliding under the baggy shirt. Kami gave him a wicked smile before spinning out of his hold, turning to walk down the hallway as he pulled his shirt up over his head, putting his back and ass fully on display for his lover. "I'll start stretching myself, hurry and put all that food away." Bakugou had never moved so fast. Kaminari had never felt so elated in his life. Sure, there were a lot of moments and accomplishments that meant the world to him. Making it into UA, graduation, getting his first gig as a sidekick. But nothing compared to the feeling on that first morning he woke up in bed with Bakugou, the day after all his things had been unpacked in the apartment. He had never imagined in his wildest dreams that Bakugou Katsuki, Ground Freaking Zero, would love him back. And not only love him back, but love him just as fiercely and all-encompassing as he does. The happiness he felt was like a living thing under his skin, growing with each pound of his heart. As he wandered the town running errands, trying to kill time until Bakugou's shift ended, he knew he was wearing a carefree smile on his face. And there's nothing better when you're in a good mood than getting to spend time with a friend. "Kaminari, hi." He glances up from his phone to see Midoriya walking towards him, dressed in his hero gear and waving happily. "I thought that was you." "Mido, hey." He rushed to wrap his friend up in a hug, thrilled to see him. "Are you on patrol?" Midoriya hummed in confirmation. "But I need to grab lunch, want to join me?" "Ooh, Izuku Midoriya, are you asking me on a date?" He grins playfully at his friend, who just smiled patiently at him. "I accept your offer. Where were you thinking of going?" Once they decide on a quiet place, they order their food and sit down to eat. "I heard that you moved in with Kachan. I'm so happy for you both," Midoriya says as he blows on his soup to cool it down. "I can't say the news was very surprising though, the two of you have grown so close." Kaminari smiled around his food, taking the time to chew and swallow before replying. "Yeah, I just finished moving my things last week. The lease for my place is up next month, so it'll be nice to stop paying for something I don't use anymore." Midoriya raised an eyebrow at him. "You guys sure moved in together fast." He gave him a shy smile. "Yeah, we kind of did. But we've known each other for so long that it's been really seamless so far." "That's good, I'm glad." Midoriya reached across and touched Kaminari's hand gently. "We don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, but are you okay? I mean, with the things he prioritizes." He pulls his hand back, but doesn't break their eye contact. "I love Kachan a lot, and he's one of my closest friends. But you're my friend too, and I just want to make sure that you're getting what you need from all of this, too. I want you both to be happy." Kaminari reaches back across the small table to take his hand, and smiles gently at him. "I appreciate you so much, Midoriya. I'm surrounded by so many good friends, and don't think you're the only person to approach me about this." The two giggle. "But don't worry, Katsuki told me exactly what to expect out of this, and I'm okay with that right now. It's honestly what I'm looking for, since I'm focused on my work right now, too." He thinks for a moment, lips pursed. "I'm just not as worried about my rankings, you know. But I'll be busy too, so it works out." Midoriya squeezes his hand. "Good. I'm so glad you and Kachan are able to find what you need with each other. You make such a lovely couple." He squeezes back, touched by how much Midoriya cares. He feels lucky to be one of the people he considers a friend. "Thank you. We're going to be just fine, I think. And if that changes in the future, and if I'm in too deep," he shrugs with an easy smile, Then I hope I can come to you as a friend to lean on. Midoriya's face becomes very earnest, and he brings his other hand over to hold Kaminari's in both of his. Absolutely, I'll be here for you, no matter what. I would never turn away a friend in need. Kaminari can feel the happiness bubble up inside of him. Thanks, Mido. They both go back to their food, keeping a close eye on the clock, knowing Midoriya needs to get back to his patrol. Now why don't you tell me a bit about this sexy pilot from Athene, huh? The rumor mill tells me he moved to the city recently? He grins wickedly as he watches the flush spread across his friend's face, stuttering and waving his hands frantically in embarrassment. As he waves goodbye to Midoriya after their meal, watching him jog off to get back to his patrol, Kaminari can't help but think that he has some of the best friends in the world. It's nice to know that so many people care enough about him to check in with him, even when it's not needed. Because truth be told, Kaminari has been walking on clouds since moving in with Bakugou. Coming home to find one of his guitars, as well as framed pictures of him and his friends performing, hung up on the wall next to the flat-screen TV had been an emotional surprise. There were even more pictures scattered around the apartment as well, sitting on tables and window sills, pictures of himself, Bakugou, and their friends, ranging from high school to more recent events and get-togethers. He had of course cried like a baby when he saw it all, and clung to Bakugou the rest of the night. His boyfriend didn't seem to mind, even when his arms circled around his waist from behind as Kami hugged him while he stood at the stove and cooked them dinner. Nor was it hard for Kami to pull him to their bedroom early that night and tumble into the sheets with him. Moving in together had changed so much for Kaminari. Not only were they both saving money by splitting the rent for Bakugou's apartment, but Kami was also a lot closer to work now. And on top of that, the amount of time he got to spend with Bakugou had grown exponentially. Now when their schedules didn't line up, it didn't matter as much, because when Bakugou had an early morning patrol and Kaminari wasn't due until that afternoon, he was able to roll out of bed and make coffee while his boyfriend was showering and getting ready. And if sometimes he dropped to his knees to blow him before he left, well, no one needed to know that. Whenever Kaminari was the last one to come home after work, he knew that dinner would be waiting for him. And while he ate, Bakugou would draw him a bath and let him pick whichever bath bomb he wanted. Most nights he bathed alone, but sometimes he could lure Bakugou in with him. And when their patrol schedules were really out of whack, or when a villain attack caused one of them to come home well into the small hours of the morning, they got to crawl into bed where the other was already sleeping, getting pulled into their arms and cuddled until they were both fast asleep. And on the days when things went wrong, when they couldn't save everyone, they had someone to hold them while they cried. Someone to wipe their tears and bring them breakfast in bed, who wouldn't judge them for getting their emotions out the way they needed to. Bakugou will even join in on some of his skincare routines, letting Kaminari gently rub moisturizer and other products onto his face, and he enjoys doing sheet masks with him. He'll sit by patiently, reading or watching a show, while Kami paints his nails, helping him to choose a color for the week and getting him snacks and things while they dry. Their closeness has increased tenfold, and their lives fit so naturally together, sliding into place like puzzle pieces. They were both working a lot of hours, but they made every moment they had together count. Not a second went by that either of them questioned their love and devotion for each other. Kami couldn't ask for anything more perfect. And it stays that way, the bliss and the happiness, for a long time. But not forever. After several years of happiness, things start to change. It begins slowly at first. The things Kaminari had been happy with, and even the things he had no problem tolerating before, had started to chafe against his mind as he laid in bed awake at night. He was watching the people around him, how their lives are changing and moving on to the next phases of adult life. He attends housewarming parties, always making sure to have a gift for whoever it is, knowing Bakugou will never have the time to think of it. And when Bakugou doesn't attend, Kami has to smile at his friends and apologize for his boyfriend, whether he's away on a mission or just taking extra patrols. No one ever judges him, always so understanding and grateful to have him there. He gets some strange looks, even concerned, but no one says anything to him yet. He sees his friends adopting pets, and falls in love with Ashido and Hagakuri's puppies. Whenever he is able to bother them, he comes over to play, and will dog sit for them sometimes. There are few things in this world that can compare to cuddling with a happy puppy. She's a dog, Kaminari. She wasn't even a puppy when we adopted her from the shelter. Mina, every dog is a puppy. They're either a young puppy or an old puppy. But all of them are puppies. Whatever you say, Sparkplug. Kaminari is 26 years old when he takes a moment to look at his life and evaluate where he wants to be. He even feels a bit like Midoriya as he opens a blank note on his phone and starts to list out the things he wants to accomplish. First is a house. He loves Shiro and Todoroki's home out in the suburbs, a quiet neighborhood filled with young couples all starting their families. Big backyards and having family and friends over for dinner on the weekends, the quiet peace of the neighborhood without the constant sounds and sirens of the city. No hustle and bustle, but a slower pace for people that don't have to worry about the fast-paced movement of being a top hero. So many things are changing around Kaminari, and he realizes in a moment of clarity as he sits on a chair in the kitchen, alone at the table while eating a dinner Bakugou had cooked this morning and left in the fridge for him, that Kami has changed too. He doesn't want to have to walk through a lobby full of people and wait for an elevator to get to his front door. He's no longer blissfully happy with the busy schedules and the rushing around. He's no longer unbothered by the lack of his boyfriend in his everyday life. The no-pet rule of their apartment bothers him now. He wants some kind of company since he finds himself home more often, less eager to pick up all the extra hours and patrols that he can. He's been saving a great deal, and no longer needs to worry about whether he'll have money for the next month's rent. He doesn't feel the drive to work as much as he can. He's reached a point in his career where he makes enough money to not need to work himself to the bone. He remembers the cat from his childhood fondly, curling up with it in a chair by the window, soaking up the sun together as he would read. Feeling the small, warm cat purring gently against his chest, snoozing away knowing she was safe in his arms. He wants to have a garden that he can mess around in, even though his thumb is about as green as his hair. He wants to grow all kinds of different flowers, and get excited when he sees them start to bloom each year. He wants that quiet, sleepy neighborhood, away from the hustle and bustle of the city, where the most exciting thing to happen any given day is the bake sale at the local library. He wants a place to call his own, where he can paint the rooms whatever color he wants, and have multiple guest rooms for his friends to crash in when they come over to drink. He wants a space away from everything, someplace he can share with Bakugou and no one else. A home. A place where they can start a family, because as he watches Midoriya and Rodi with his younger siblings, the dynamic they share, he feels something in his heart twinge. The thought of adopting a son or daughter together alongside Bakugou, of late nights rocking them to sleep and teaching them to ride a bike, watching them play sports and helping them with homework after dinner. Of family vacations and celebrating birthdays, making a big deal of little milestones and embarrassing them. Kaminari wants it all. And he wants it all with Bakugou. But he needs Bakugou to want it just as much as he does. They reach their tipping point much differently than Kaminari expected. The letter in the mail comes on a rare day when they are both home, cuddled up on the couch watching new episodes of a show they both enjoy. Cats, look. Kaminari rushes back to the couch where Bakugou is playing a game on his phone, waiting for him to press play. Look. What? He deadpans back, amusement lighting in his eyes. It's an invite to the Hero Ranking Award ceremony. No shit. Bakugou reaches forward, dragging Kaminari into his lap. That means top 100, holy. With trembling hands and unable to fully control the static electricity building across his skin, Kaminari rips open the envelope and pulls out the folded letter. Bakugou squeezes his waist in encouragement, and with a final deep breath Kaminari opens the page. Holy shit. He skims over all the fancy wording, skipping right to the important bit down at the bottom. We formally invite you to accept recognition for placing 86th in the hero ranking this year. Danks, 86th. You launched from 134 all the way to 86th. Kaminari is already sobbing, dropping the page on the table as he throws himself into Bakugou's arms. His boyfriend is laughing joyously, hand running soothing circles across his back, whispering sweet words of congratulations and praise. Kaminari pops his head up suddenly. Oh my god. I need a tux. We both need a tux. Bakugou snorts. We can talk to my parents, I'm sure they'll be thrilled to help. He smiles at his boyfriend, those red eyes glowing with pride. You'll come to the ceremony with me, right? Course I will. Kami smiles big and crashes their lips together, Bakugou humming into it. It took a few hours before they remembered to call his parents and ask to schedule a fitting. As the award ceremony got closer, Kaminari got more and more excited. Sure, only the top 10 heroes would get to come on stage and receive formal recognition, but the rest of the top 100 were all invited, and it was seen as a great honor to attend. And this was the first year Kaminari would be attending as one of the heroes in the top 100. Their matching tuxes were hanging in the closet of the spare bedroom, and Kami vibrated with excitement each time he looked at them. The date was circled on the calendar hanging in the kitchen, decorated with bright stickers. Almost every moment that Kaminari and Bakugou were together, he couldn't stop talking about it. Or at least all the moments they weren't tangled up together in bed, or against the wall, or in the shower, or on the couch. Kaminari just could not stop talking about it, and was unable to hide how excited he was. And each time, Bakugou would give him a patient smile, a pat on the head, and say, "You did really good, thanks." And hearing that from Katsuki meant more to him than placing in 86th to begin with. But somehow, the weekend before the event, Bakugou was adding his upcoming work schedule to the whiteboard alongside Kami's. On Saturday he wrote, "Double shift." Babe? What's up? I think your schedule is wrong." Bago glanced up from his mug of coffee, brow furrowed in confusion. The chair scraped as he stood, placing a heavy hand on the small of Kami's back as he hovered behind him to check. "No, that's right." The electric blonde turned and glanced at him, confused. "But you have a double listed on Saturday." "Yeah, they were asking who was free, so I took it on." "But Saturday is the award ceremony?" Bakugou shrugged, walking back to his chair. "Those things are all pomp and circus shit. I'd rather be out on patrol than sit around in that stuffy tux." "You're in the top 10, Bakugou. They literally have you stand on stage." His boyfriend laughs, sounding far more relaxed than the raging silence spreading through Kaminari's bones. "It's not number 1, and being out on patrol means I'm getting closer to that number 1 spot. I'll show up when I can boast." The air in the room takes on a heavy quality that Bakugou seems immune to. But there are heroes outside of the top 100 that are expected to step up when this award ceremony is happening, right? That's what the Hero Commission expects to happen. "Oh yeah, that's how they've always done it, but they can't force me to go." Kaminari stares down at his hands, brow furrowed and heart aching. Bakugou must sense something from his silence, because he glances up from where he's eating his breakfast to look at him. "What are you thinking about over there?" He knows he should take a moment to collect himself before trying to communicate how he feels, but Kaminari can't find the space among the deafening roar building in his mind to think. "This is a really big night for me. I never expected to hit the top 100, especially not this young. And I just wanted to be special." Those red eyes turn amused. "It'll be plenty special, trust me. They'll have those fancy little finger foods, some expensive wine, and a whole bunch of press there to bug you." Kaminari finally looks up into Bakugou's eyes, and he can feel the heat building behind them, moisture gathering. Not quite teary-eyed yet, but creeping close to that territory. "You really don't care about being there for me?" "Babe, we live together. I see you every day." Kaminari clenched his jaw as he stared at Bakugou. His eyes run all over him, and for a moment Bakugou looks a bit apprehensive, and his hands start to fidget with the chopsticks he's holding. Bakugou never gets nervous when someone stares him down, because he knows how to stand his ground. But Kami feels a small, ugly spark of pride at the fact that ground zero is shifting uncomfortably under his harsh stare. But Kami just can't find the energy to argue. That excitement that had been fueling his energy all week is suddenly gone. Ripped out from under him, leaving him unsteady on his feet. All of a sudden he can't seem to find that place inside himself that he draws on for all his boundless energy, and so he turns back to the calendar. "I suppose you're right," he whispers, the words tasting ashen on his tongue. "I shouldn't make a big deal over something so small. It's not small, you should be proud of yourself. And enjoy it, you like those fancy get-togethers. It's just not my cup of tea." Kami gives him a weak smile. "Course." He gets up from the table. "I'm going to go take a bath." Bakugou grins, leaning forward eagerly. "Oh yeah, you need help in there." "I've got it handled, thanks," he says before walking off. Bakugou's surprised look at the blunt reply barely registers as he slips into the bathroom, door clicking shut quietly behind him. He goes through the motions of cleaning himself, rushing his way through something he normally takes joy in doing in favor of getting done quickly so he can avoid the quiet, giving him space to think. Pomp and circus. An unimportant celebration, unless you were celebrating the top spot. His tears barely make a sound as they fall into the bathwater. Bakugou sat at the table, confused. Normally Kaminari was the one jumping his bones and dragging him into their oversized bathtub with him, excited to watch Bakugou's patience wear thin as he squirmed in his lap, the water splashing over the edge with the force of his thrusts once he finally snapped. Kami had never turned him down quite like this before. And it continued throughout the night, the tense air between them carrying into their bed as Kami turned off his lamp and curled up close to the edge of the bed. Bakugou wonders what happened to set Kaminari off, but typically they will resolve whatever went wrong the next day after Kami has had time to process his emotions. But the next morning rolls around, and the tension becomes even thicker. There's nothing particularly rude about the way Kaminari acts towards him, but compared to his normally bubbly self, this new coldness is a shock to Bakugou's routine. While he's meal prepping for their day, Kami comes into the kitchen with a subdued greeting, and pads around silently while he makes their coffee. Even when Bakugou tries to prompt him into talking, he gives the shortest reply possible to answer the question fully. Even as Bakugou is leaving for work, where normally his boyfriend would come over to the door to beep him goodbye, Kaminari stands in the kitchen, staring down into his cup with a faraway stare. He stands by the door, boots already on, staring through the threshold to a different Kaminari than he is used to. A small, petty part of himself wants to leave without his goodbye beep, since Kami is clearly not paying attention to him. But a bigger part of him desperately doesn't want to leave the house until he's gotten his boyfriend's full attention. So he toes off his shoes, stalking forward, clearing his throat softly so as to not startle Kami once he's in front of him. Eyes normally bright and peppy with energy are a dulled gold, glancing up at him in question. "I'm headed out." "Oh." Kami glances past Bakugou's arm to see his things gathered at the door. "Right. Come home safe, Katsuki." The shorter man stretches on his tiptoes to press a brief beep to his lips before moving away to start cleaning up the dishes. Bakugou takes that as his cue to leave and slips back into his shoes before locking the door back up behind him. In the locker room of the agency, Bakugou is throwing on his hero costume when Kirishima comes wandering in. Kiri isn't much of a morning person, so they fall into a companionable silence as the hardening hero slowly works his way into full wakefulness. Once the shine is back in his eyes and he has a bounce in his step, Bakugou decides now is a good time to bring up what's been bothering him since last night. Denki has been acting weird, he states, glancing over at his friend. The knowing, disappointed look the redhead shoots him tells him all he needs to know. He told you what he's upset about. You could say that. Bakugou heaves out a sigh as they make their way to their desks to grab their patrol routes. All right, hit me with it. He glances at Kirishima to see an uncomfortable look cross his face. It's not my place to get involved in your fight, man. Throwing his hands up in the air, Bakugou snags his earpiece and storms over to the front door. Well, Denki isn't speaking up for himself, so you may as well tell me so I can try to fix it. Kirishima paused just outside the agency, looking deep in thought for a moment. He must have weighed the pros and cons of speaking up, because the silence lasted long enough for Bakugou to start fidgeting before speaking. Top 100 is a big deal. Christ, is this about that stupid party? Bakugou growled, turning to stalk towards their patrol route. Kirishima rushed after him, not struggling at all to catch up. It's not just some party, it's an award ceremony. It's a celebration of the top 100 heroes in Japan, and he just landed himself among them in a huge way. It's a stupid party, shitty hair. And so what if it is? Kiri shouted, throwing his hands up in the air. It's important to Kami. And he has been so excited that you're going together as a couple. He's been gushing to me about how great you look in the tux you got, and how much he can't wait to have you there celebrating his achievements. And in a single conversation you made him question if his accomplishment means anything at all? Bakugou's head snaps up at that. I told him he should be proud of himself, he worked hard for it. But you refuse to go and show your support for him. You won't go and be seen as a couple with him on the biggest stage for heroes all year. He thinks he isn't good enough for you. His brow furrows, wondering how Kaminari could have possibly gotten that idea in his head. He is good enough for me, he means everything to me. But apparently he doesn't mean enough for you to suffer through a night in a tux for him. That's where you draw the line for how important he is to you. The silence that follows is damning. Bakugou thinks of all the things that Kaminari will do, complaining the whole while, but will still do if he asked him to. Like the early morning runs when their schedules line up, or trips out to that one restaurant that's a bit of a drive away from them. Kami sits through the whole dinner, smiling as Bakugou enjoys his meal and then silently pulling through a drive-thru for takeout on the way home. And Bakugou never has to ask Kaminari to make these sacrifices for him. Kami just does them when he asks if he would like to go together. Bakugou begins to see how Kami had taken him declining to go as a slight, "Oh. Yeah, oh. Fix it bro, because I am sick of you making him sad." Kirishima does not curse often, if at all. Unlike Bakugou, he's perfectly capable of communicating his thoughts and feelings without harsh words. So Bakugou knows he's pissed, and knows he deserves it. He runs a hand through his hair in frustration. I really need to make this up to him, huh? Step 1 is rescheduling your shift, then telling him you're going to attend the ceremony and show off your amazing boyfriend to the whole world. Kirishima stops in front of Bakugou, hands on his hips and gaze determined. And you are going to do all of that today. Bakugou nods along, plans already forming in his head. I should grab flowers on my way home. Might want to throw in something from that fancy bakery he's obsessed with too. He flinches when he thinks of how expensive he knows those little bundles of empty calories are going to be, but makes a note to go there and place an order during his lunch break. If he's gonna apologize, he may as well do some extra groveling to make sure Kami knows he meant it. At the bakery that afternoon, he asks the girl behind the counter to throw together an assortment of their most popular treats, and asks if there's any way she can make it yellow or electricity themed. She smiles widely and asks if it's for Chargebolt. When he confirms that it is, she squeals, "Leave it to us." The rest of his patrol is awkward, Kirishima seeming to still be upset with him and checking his phone often. And although Kiri's phone seems to be going off non-stop, Bakugou's phone stays silent in his pocket, the normal string of updates and memes missing. And even though most days he didn't have time to read each message until after his shift, he finds the lack of messages in those silent moments stifling. It's difficult to realize the good things he has when he has them, but the aching emptiness it leaves behind when it's gone is a shock to his system, and it's not the kind of electricity he likes. Once he's done meeting with the scheduling admin at the agency, Bakugou makes his way over to the bakery to pick up his order. Kami has a shift ending a few hours later than him today, so he'll have the time to wash up and cook a fancy dinner too. He makes sure to grab groceries at the store next to the flower shop, laden down with armfuls of what will hopefully be an appropriate apology once he's finished prepping. Finally in their apartment with all the cold foods in the fridge, Bakugou takes a moment to open the bakery box to check on what's inside. On the underside of the lid is a handwritten message in lovely handwriting, congratulating Chargebolt on breaking the top 100, along with doodles of lightning bolts and smiley faces. All the pastries have been colored yellow, and some even have cookies and fondant in the shape of lightning. Bakugou nods in reluctant approval. They really went all out. He's glad he gave them such a big tip. After showering and picking out a dressier outfit than he would normally wear to hang around in their apartment, Bakugou gets straight into prepping for dinner. He's just finished washing his hands, and is walking around lighting candles when the front door opens behind him. A nice hot bath and curling up in bed with a book is the only thing getting Kaminari to put one foot in front of the other as he walks home from work that day. Patrol had been rough, with one too many villains deciding that then was the perfect moment for them to enact their heinous master plans. Kami was bruised and sore, and so very lucky that Tokiyami had been in the area when the call went out for backup. But no matter how surprising a villain with the ability to disappear your underwear from under your clothes by just pointing at you is, it couldn't top the shock he felt when he walked into his apartment to find it dimly lit by candles, with his boyfriend dressed in slacks and a tight-fitting button-up. "Hey Denks," he says, walking over and pulling him into a hug. "Hi." Kaminari is confused, but keeps his body loose to be pulled into Bakugou's arms, warm lips pressing against his forehead. "What's going on?" His boyfriend just hums, taking him by the hand and leading him to their bathroom. There are candles in there, too. And Bakugou turns on the shower, helping Kami out of his clothes as the water warms up. Once he is in the shower and starts to wash his hair, he listens as Bakugou undresses and jumps slightly in surprise when he slips in with him. "Babe, can I help?" Bakugou has such a sincere look on his face, a hand gently rubbing over Kami's shoulder. Once he got the go-ahead, gentle fingers were rubbing shampoo into his hair, meticulous and careful. Kami couldn't help the soft beep he let out, the headache that had built up throughout the day at work flowing down the drain with the soap. And when the conditioner is sitting in his hair and Bakugou has a rag in his hand all lathered up with soap, Kaminari starts to beep for other reasons. His boyfriend's hands are everywhere, making sure every inch of him is squeaky clean. He handles him with a reverence that Kami has rarely seen, and he lets himself get lost in Bakugou's hands and mouth. Once all the product has been rinsed from Kami's body and hair, he turns and reaches to return the favor, but Bakugou gently stops his hand. "Later, baby," he whispers, eyes molten and promising something amazing later. Kaminari can't help but wonder if all of this is some sort of apology, or if Bakugou even understands what he's apologizing for. Is he just doing this because he still won't be going to the ceremony, or did he change his mind? Kami doesn't want to get his hopes up, but his heart starts to swell with affection. He knows he should still be mad, but when Bakugou is putting in this much effort, he wants to forgive him for everything and just curl up in his arms. Once they're out of the shower, Bakugou is running a bath, bringing it to the perfect temperature and pulling out Kami's collection of bath bombs to choose from. "Are you going to join me?" Kami asks, wondering if this will be the later Bakugou mentioned. "No, I'm going to cook us dinner while you soak in here. Stay in as long as you like, I can always bring the food to you. I would rather eat out there with you, so get me before it's done?" A thumb brushes against Kami's cheek and he looks up just in time for Bakugou to lean down and press their lips together. "Sure thing, I'll come grab you as soon as I'm done." Then he slips back out the door and leaves Kami alone to slip into the water. His mind is a mess of thoughts, but Kami does his best to focus on each muscle in his body and willfully force it to relax, starting down at his toes and working his focus all the way up to his head, until he's so relaxed his nose is barely above the surface of the water. The calming vanilla scent of the bath bomb works into his system, letting his mind drift until he is unable to focus on any of his worries. It's a close call, but Kami stays awake until Bakugou comes back into the room. He's not sure how long Bakugou stands in the doorway watching him with a smile, but when he finally does notice him, his boyfriend comes over and helps him from the tub, rinsing him down and towel drying his body and hair gently. Kami is still feeling so relaxed that he can barely keep himself standing upright, leaning heavily against Bakugou's sturdiness. Once he's fully dry, he's lifted into strong arms and carried to the bedroom, where his most fancy button-up and slacks wait for him, a mirror to the fancy clothes Bakugou is wearing. Dinner is an elaborate affair, full of all Kaminari's favorite foods. He makes sure to voice that as well, not holding back on the beeps of appreciation as he stuffs his face, cheeks puffed up in a way that he thinks must look ridiculous, but Bakugou has grudgingly admitted he thinks is very cute. Embarrassing as he thinks it is, it gets him the results he wants. Either from the compliments or the chipmunk cheeks, his boyfriend shyly watches him throughout the meal. "Make sure to save room for dessert, Sparks." He gasps, eyes wide. "Did you make that, too?" "Nah, I picked that up. I ain't much of a baker, you know that. And somehow everything you've ever baked has been delicious." That earns him an eye roll. "You're biased, your opinion doesn't count." Kamin giggles while Bakugou clears the table of dishes and packages away the leftovers after a very threatening glare when he tries to help. He chats about how his day at work went, watching as Bakugou perks up cutely when he describes the different villains and incidents from today. Then a box from his favorite, expensive, bakery is being placed in front of him, and his sentence dries up in his mouth. "No way, did you really stop and get these today?" Bakugou nods, a small smile on his face at Kaminari's antics that the smaller blonde reflects back at him. But as soon as Kami opens the box, his smile vanishes, replaced by confusion. Little lightning bolt cookies, a mini cupcake with black, white and yellow icing, cookies with yellow sugar on top. So many different treats with his own branding covering it all. And then he notices the writing. Congrats on making the top 100 Chargebolt. You saved my little sister last year and ever since I've been your biggest fan. Thank you for all of your hard work. He blinks past the tears in his eyes and glances up at Bakugou. His boyfriend merely shrugs. I didn't tell them to write that, I just asked if they could make a themed box. Closing the lid gently, Kaminari wipes his eyes and looks up at him. Katsuki, what is all of this for? The man in question sighs, running a hand through his hair, causing the normally spiky blonde hair to be even more chaotic. I have been such an ass, Denki. It should have never come to this point, but I knew my apology needed to be big. I am so sorry. Kaminari's face takes on a slightly defensive pinch, and Bakugou seems to almost flinch at the sight. Sorry for what, exactly? Bakugou nodded, shoving his hands in his pockets and staring down at his feet. I deserve that. Grabbing a chair, he pulls it over to sit down right next to Kami. I'm sorry for disregarding something important to you just because I don't understand it. You made it abundantly clear that it was a big deal for you, and that you wanted me there, and I was an ass to just ignore it. This is my fault. You communicated with me very clearly, and I just didn't listen. He thinks back to his conversation with Kirishima earlier, and knows there's something even more important than the apology that he needs to make sure that Kami understands. I want you to know I am so damn proud of you, and all the work you've done. You save lives and make the world a better place just by being here. He taps on the box, and Kami flushes at the praise from the message inside. And I do want every damn extra out there to know that the rank 86 hero loves me, and comes home to me every single day. That someone as amazing and kind-hearted as you sees me and wants to be with me. Because it means so much to me to have your love, and yeah, I'm a bit possessive and selfish, so I want everyone to know your sexy ass is mine. The back of his fingers brush gently over the side of Kami's neck, eyes tracing the movement as he watches Kami turn red. The longer I think about it, the more I realize I don't want you going anywhere dressed as hot as you look in that tux if you're not on my arm. Bakugou's lips follow his hand, lingering for a moment against Kami's pulse before pulling back, close enough to be breathing each other in. I don't want anyone making a move on you, because I know you're a hot commodity, and a lot of people want you. So I gotta prove to you I'm worth your time, and that I love you as much as you love me. He presses their foreheads together, eyes burning as he stares at Kaminari. Denki, will you let me be your date to the ceremony? Once again, Kami wonders if receiving recognition from Bakugou is some sort of drug. It hits him harder than any recognition from the Heroes Commission or even from his fans and the public, and tears immediately spring to his eyes. You're sure you want to come? I swear it, and you know I don't say things I don't mean. Then I want you to be there with me, to celebrate together. Suddenly Kami is being swept up into strong arms, Bakugou's face pressed into his neck, his breathing erratic. Thank you, Firefly. He giggles from his place held aloft, wrapping his arms and legs around his whole world. Now hold on a moment, there are sweets calling my name. Maybe we should save those for after, Bakugou growls, nipping at his neck. I did promise you more later, and it's now later. Kaminari lets out a sigh that contradicts the way his body reacts to Bakugou, how his head tilts to give him better access, his breath hitching and arms tightening. Bakugou wouldn't be able to put him down anyway, with how tightly he clings to him. I guess dessert can wait till later, he whispers, letting out a shriek as Bakugou practically runs towards the bedroom. This is what trying looked like. The extra care, the effort, doing things to make Kami happy whether Bakugou enjoyed them or not. Taking into account how Kami feels about things before making a decision, fixing it when he does something wrong. It gave him a warm feeling, something that sustained him all day and night, that kept his body moving when he was tired from work, that got him out of bed in the mornings when Bakugou was still asleep from a night shift. That overwhelming feeling of being loved just as much as he loved in turn. Maybe now, Kaminari will be able to ask for things, for more. The morning of the ceremony, Kami woke up to soft beepies and flowers. The smile on his face as he turned to find his boyfriend felt like it was never going away. The rest of the morning was spent in bed, Bakugou showering Kaminari in his attention and affection. No marks where they will show, Kami whined, pushing gently at Bakugou's head as his teeth grazed across his neck. His boyfriend grunted in displeasure, but moved his way down to his chest instead. Their morning stayed lazy like that until it was time to get ready, and even when they were almost running late, Bakugou had a hard time letting go of Kami to get to the car. At the event, Bakugou was of course swarmed by the press, as the number 10 hero for the third time in a row. The unusual thing about it was that this time, after they noticed who was standing next to him, they turned to ask Kami a few questions as well. Breaking the top 100 in the leap that he had was unusual, and it had people talking. Even other heroes came over to congratulate him, and Bakugou stood next to him the whole time, smug with an arm wrapped around his waist. Plenty of their friends from high school were there, and they made sure to greet them all. Some of them weren't huggers, like Tokiyami or Jiru, but put up with it for Kaminari. Others, like Midoriya and Yaomomo, were always ready for a hug when they saw the excitable blonde coming their way. The social hour lasted for longer than Kami had expected, but before long everyone was being herded to their seats. The top 10 had seats up front, and Bakugou pressed a quick beep to the edge of his hairline before slouching off to where he was being directed. No announcement or anything was given for the top 11 to 100 heroes, so the head of the commission gave a short speech before they began to call up each of the top 10 heroes. Like the year before, they asked each hero to say a few words. As soon as the mic is in front of Bakugou, his eyes find Kami in the crowd. "I don't plan on celebrating my own accomplishments until I'm in that number 1 spot. I only came here because my boyfriend placed 86th. The interviewer looks shocked, gazing off to the side. Someone must communicate with her who that is, because she turns back to Bakugou with a small smile, seeming confident she can get things more under control. "You're dating the hero Chargebolt?" "Yeah, and I'm stupid proud of him. He's been kicking ass." Kami feels his heart soar, and for a moment thinks maybe Uraraka is nearby and hit him with her quirk, because he feels like all the recent praise from Bakugou is going to make him float away. The interviewer nods along. "Well, congrats Chargebolt, not only for your break into the top 100, but also for landing the number 10 hero as a boyfriend." There's some laughter from the crowd at the joke, and Kami is blushing away in the audience. But Bakugou grunts unhappily, and everyone from Class A in the crowd groans lightly, knowing what's coming. "He ain't lucky at all. I'm way too much of a handful all the time. I'm the lucky one to have someone so kind willing to put up with my crap." Kami's heart stutters in his chest, and the interviewer seems at a loss of words. But the crowd is laughing too much, many of the heroes there having interacted with Bakugou before, and seen firsthand why it may be difficult for someone to love him. There is a definite shift in the attitude in the crowd, like maybe Kaminari is some kind of saint. The speech definitely blows up the internet, and as the interviewer moves on from Bakugou, Kami can feel the way his phone is going off with countless notifications. But he's too busy to pay attention, staring up at his boyfriend on stage with hearts and tears in his eyes. As soon as the speeches are over and Bakugou is walking back through the crowd, he makes a beeline for Kaminari. But Kami is prepared for him, standing next to Kirishima and Shiro. He opens his arms and lets Bakugou barrel into him. "That was a very inspired speech, Cats." He tilts his head up to look at him, a small smile on his face. Bakugou looks content for the first time since they had to split up tonight, leaning down to press a beep to his lips. Nearby there is a flash of light, and Kirishima telling someone not to be rude. Kami looks over and sees a reporter with a camera, holding his hands up in defeat with a slimy smile on his face. Bakugou just grunts and pulls Kami back in, beeping him even more soundly. Kiri continues to try and defend his friend's privacy to no avail, but when they finally separate and Kami sees the smug look on his boyfriend's face in a daze, he realizes that maybe Bakugou was trying to have those pictures taken. To be seen claiming Kaminari publicly. And that thought lights something hot and insatiable inside of Kami, and all of a sudden he can't wait to get home. And the praises Bakugou whispered to him that night as he stretched him open felt better than any recognition he received from their friends and fans. Each thrust and word of love sparked something deep in Kami's chest. So his hope grew. He never wanted it to turn into an argument. All he had wanted was to explain to Bakugou what he was feeling. Communication was key, and that had gotten them through their relationship thus far. But in his bid for full disclosure with his boyfriend, he didn't even stop and think of how it should be best delivered. In the days following the ceremony, they fell back into the same routine they always did. That is to say, Bakugou was at work most of the time, and Kami was left missing him. So when he sat Bakugou down to chat, remembering how well the ceremony had gone, and all the words of love and affirmation Bakugou had given him. Soft words describing how Kaminari was feeling were met with anger he was not expecting. You know this is the shit Deku left me for, right? This exact argument. Bakugou had started pacing when he realized what this conversation was about, and had yet to return to the seat next to Kami. Almost like he could barely stand to be near him.
Yeah, he left you. I'm still here, fighting for us. The desperation to make him understand, to have him care, caused Kami's voice to break, falling on deaf ears.
Running a hand through his hair, Bakugou was getting more frustrated the longer this conversation went on. I told you when we started dating what you would be getting from me, and nothing more. That was 5 years ago, Katsuki. What I want and need has changed since then, and no matter how much higher on that list you get, you haven't changed at all. You go to the same gym, and do the same workout, eat the same food and do the same job and never do anything more than that. What more is there? He shouted, throwing his hands in the air. That's what I want.
Kaminari deflated, the fight leaking out of him until he felt a strange sense of emptiness. Can you at least try for me? I need more, Katsuki. He rubbed his hands over his face, feeling frustrated tears prick behind his eyes. Every time we talk about this, you never budge. It's always me making concessions for you. I'm not invincible, babe. I can only handle so much before I break.
No, Denki, no, that's not what I want. Bakugou dropped to his knees in front of Kaminari, gently pulling at his wrists until his hands fell away from his face. I don't want this to hurt you. I want us to face everything together. We're a team. Then would you be willing to try for me? Just a few small things, and we can see how it makes you feel. Just like you did for the Hero Award ceremony. Yeah. The word tumbled from his lips like a sigh, the air pushing the syllables out of him. Yeah, that can work. Once the two had calmed down in each other's arms, tears gone and breathing evened out, they continued to talk, moving to lay down together in bed. Why don't you start with the big stuff? Bakugou asked, hand running gently up and down Kami's back. Just rip the band-aid off with the shit you think I'm gonna hate the most. He hums back, head tucked under Bakugou's chin so that he doesn't need to see his face when he tells him the first thing he's hoping for. He thinks it's the least likely of everything. I want to get a house, like Shiro and Todoroki. The arms around his tense immediately, but he can feel the deep breath Bakugou takes immediately, the tension leaking out with his exhale. Well, you definitely know me well enough to know which I wouldn't like most. It isn't supposed to be funny, but Kami still gives a wet chuckle anyway to fill the silence. I don't want to move out the city. Bakugou starts slowly, and when he feels Kami start to tense he speeds up, because I want to be close to the action. If we want a house that's further away from the action, and that means I won't be able to answer calls for help quickly. That makes sense, Kami supposes. But just because it's logical doesn't mean it hurts any less to hear the thing he wants most get turned down. Being able to own a home would lead to so many of the other things he wants, like pets and the possibility of adopting kids together. Before Kami can fall too far into his spiraling thoughts, Bakugou speaks up again. But how about, since I'm still close to the action, I do less work hours and instead be on call more? Kami sits up quickly, eyes wide as he stares at his boyfriend's earnest face. That way I can spend more time with you, but still be called on for any of the bigger incidents. You would do that for me? His voice trembles, hands gripping tightly at Bakugou's shirt. For a moment, the explosive blonde looks almost hurt, with maybe a bit of shame thrown in alongside it. Fingers brush under his eye, catching the tears sliding out against his will. Yeah, thanks, I can do that for you. I'll ask about it next time I see Endeavor. He leans forward and presses a beep to his forehead, letting Kaminari latch onto him tightly and squeezing him back just as much. Does that mean we'll have time to go on dates? Dates? Bakugou asked, leaning back. I mean, yeah, we haven't gone on one in forever. Yeah, I know. Kami whispered, fingers playing with Bakugou's chain necklace. Bakugou's head presses gently against his. That's my fault. It's okay. Kami rushed to say, fingers cradling Bakugou's face. We can just start going out more now. Bakugou closes his eyes and leans into his touch, the tension leaking out of his body. All right, weekly dates. Oh, I don't need them to be weekly, that's asking for too much. It's for me. Would that be okay? The two of them made eye contact. Kami shocked at the sincerity he found in his boyfriend's eyes. He gave a slow nod, mesmerized by the smile Bakugou gave him in response. Good, I'm looking forward to it. What should we do first? Well, Midoriya said that a new movie was coming out that you would like? I wouldn't mind going to see it. His eyes lit up when he realized what movie he was talking about. Okay, let's do that. And I can see about making a reservation for that new restaurant that just opened. Ooh, that really fancy one? Kami sat up and bounced slightly, shaking Bakugou's shoulder for emphasis. I heard you need to know someone to get a reservation. Yeah. Bakugou's head swung back and forth with Kami shaking him, an amused smirk on his face. And I'm the number 10 hero. I'll get us in there. Kami leaned down to press a quick beep to his lips. We should go dancing one week too, just like we used to. He squeals as he's flipped onto his back, Bakugou holding himself up above him with a savage grin on his face. And get to see you all dressed up for me. Why wait, we can go this weekend. He leans down to beep him, hands wandering as their conversation about date ideas is postponed until morning. Once Bakugou's work schedule has been lightened, the amount of time they're able to see each other increases so much that Kami can hardly believe it. Spending mornings in bed together, neither of them needing to eat meals alone, date nights that are a huge success, and over the span of several months, Bakugou is only called in twice to help with an emergency. Kaminari can't remember a time where he had been more happy. Even his coworkers and friends notice, telling him how much more he's smiling, the freedom with which he laughs now. Things settled into a new normal, and everything was getting better bit by bit, each day. Bakugou proposes to Kaminari when they're 27. He was laying in a hospital bed when the moment that shook his world happened. He had been on call, eating dinner with Kami in front of the TV. Kami helped him into his uniform, beeping him quickly with a whispered, "Come home safe," before Bakugou was sprinting out the door towards the district he was needed in. The fight was easy for him, but he still ended up with a spike through his gut before the end of it. Luckily the hospital was nearby, so he was taken care of immediately, and after a few hours of surgery, he woke up feeling groggy, but stitched together. Sitting next to the bed, head laying on his arms resting next to Bakugou's leg, was Kaminari. His hair was a mess, and the red around his eyes told him that his boyfriend had been crying for a while. The crease between his brows meant his sleep was uneasy, so Bakugou reached out and brushed the hair from his forehead. Sleep-dulled golden eyes blinked open slowly, and Bakugou can watch the cogs turn in his head as he slowly pieces together where he is, and why. Then his head is snapping up, locking onto Bakugou with a laser focus that almost startles him. "You're awake," he whispers, tears immediately flooding his eyes once more. The sobs that shake his body seem to rattle him to his core, and Bakugou reaches forward, beckoning him closer. With the stitches in his stomach, he isn't able to hold Kami the way he wants to, but he does his best to comfort him as he falls apart in that quiet hospital room late at night. It's that moment when everything clicks for Bakugou. He doesn't think he could go a single day without Kaminari by his side, fighting alongside him, cheering him on and waiting for him to come home safe. As he comforted Kami in his arms, as the love of his life wept over the fact that Bakugou had gotten hurt, that big heart bleeding for him, he decided that there would never be anyone else that could make him feel this way. Kaminari was it for him. And the following weeks only cemented that fact, when Kaminari took time off to help nurse Bakugou back to health. Watching his boyfriend interact with his parents, who decided to come over every single day to help take care of him, and see Kaminari handle them with just as much care. Not for a moment did he take offense to his mom stepping in to cook, or when his dad helped change his bandages. Kami understood the bone-deep fear that had struck his parents after they saw what happened, and let them do what they needed to do to reassure themselves that their son was okay. And each night Kaminari helps Bakugou wash up, getting him dressed in his comfiest clothes and cuddled up in bed, propped on pillows to get comfy and under just the right number of blankets. And then Kami would lay next to him, enough room between them so as to not hurt him if he rolled over in his sleep, but always reaching out to touch him. His hand would curl up in Bakugou's, or he would just hold onto his shirt lightly. Something small, to tell Kami that Bakugou was still there, even in his sleep. On one of those nights that Kaminari slept soundly, Bakugou was able to measure his ring finger. And as soon as Bakugou was able to walk and leave the house on his own, Kirishima accompanied him to buy an engagement ring. It was beautiful, gold like his eyes and shaped like a lightning bolt, with a yellow diamond placed on top. The matching wedding band fit next to the side of it perfectly, and he made sure to hide them both well when he brought them home. At the next hero ranking ceremony, Bakugou and Midoriya are told to be there and dressed up for work. He assumes that means that Endeavor is going to be introducing them to important people, or that they will be interviewed for some fluff piece about their agency. But then Deku is announced as the number 3 hero, and Bakugou realizes what happened. He shoots his childhood friend a grin, realizing that they are now the number 2 and 3 heroes. But then something happens that makes the entire venue go silent. Endeavor is named the number 2 hero. Kaminari is squeezing Bakugou's hand hard, almost enough to hurt. Endeavor looks smug up on stage, and Deku has never looked so dumbfounded in his life. And then Bakugou's hero name is being called for the number 1 hero, and Kaminari is shaking his arm and crying happily, trying to get Bakugou to move forward to the stage.
He finally snaps back to himself, his smile coming back in a feral way as he turns to beep Kami before making his way up to the stage among the cheering of his peers.
When the interviewer reaches him, she gives him a sly smile. Once when you came up on this stage you said you were only here for your boyfriend, and that you wouldn't celebrate until you were in the number 1 spot. How does it feel to be there now? Well, I'm feeling pretty grateful for how much Denki has supported me, because I wouldn't have gotten here without his support. He turns to the camera. I also understand that this shows how much the public trusts me, and I plan to prove to them that they were right to do so. And I'll fend off Deku to hold this spot, because I'm the best. Hey! A giggle from the other side of Endeavor makes him smile.
From there the ceremony quickly wraps up, and as soon as he is allowed off the stage Bakugou makes a beeline for Kaminari, picking him up and spinning him around before beeping him deeply in front of the entire crowd.
Class A swarms them quickly after that, and hasty plans are made before their class, and even some of their teachers all trickle over to Yaomomo and Jiru's home, large enough to host guests with so little notice. Of course when they arrive it looks as if guests were expected, although Bakugou just thinks that Momo likes to be prepared. As people are telling stories about Bakugou's time in school and rising up through the ranks, Kaminari sticks to his side, teary-eyed and so happy. He can't stop smiling, and Bakugou can't stop staring at him. Not for the first time, he thinks about how beautiful Kami is, and how he's lucky to have him. And in that moment he knows, he has to do it now. Kirishima, the good best friend that he is, runs back to Bakugou and Kaminari's apartment to grab the engagement ring for him. Once he has it, he doesn't waste a second. He thinks he hears Kirishima calling for the room to be quiet, but he's making his way to Kami with a singular focus. When the electric blonde notices him, the smile that blooms on his face makes Bakugou's heart race. But once he is in front of him, he's dropping to one knee, ring box in hand and words spilling from him that he never even practiced. Denki, he says, watching the shocked expression shift into wonder and even more happy tears. I couldn't have done this without your love and support. I know you've made a lot of sacrifices for me to reach this dream, and I want you to understand how much that means to me. He opens the box and hears their friends gasp and cheer, and somewhere nearby a nerd and his mom are crying rivers. But Bakugou can't take his gaze off those stardust eyes, tears running and a smile so wide, it's still visible from behind his hands. Denki, you mean everything to me, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me? Then Kaminari is nodding, sobbing out, yes, Katsuki, 1,000 times yes. And once the ring is on his finger, the perfect fit, Kami is collapsing into his arms, sobbing and clinging to him as their friends and family cheer around them. The rest of the night is a blur, but he can't take his eyes off of Kaminari. The shorter blonde keeps staring at the ring on his finger, a goofy smile on his face. He excitedly shows it to all their friends when they ask, and openly sobs alongside Bakugou's parents. Nothing, Bakugou thinks, could make this night any better. And then he proven wrong when he gets home and Kaminari can't even wait to reach the bedroom before dropping to his knees in front of Bakugou, showing him how much the night affected him right there, back pressed against the front door. And when the night finally concludes in their bed, both of them sweaty and tired, Kaminari presses a soft beep to Bakugou's cheek before drifting off to sleep. Bakugou and Kaminari had spoken prior to the proposal about getting married. He never would have sprung like that on him in public if he didn't know for sure it was something he wanted. But with the proposal came a few agreements that they both knew Bakugou was cementing by asking Kami to marry him. This included that he would make sure to continue to put the same time and effort into their engagement and marriage that he has been doing for their relationship. That means in addition to that, no more far away, overnight missions, because those always start arguments and make Kaminari so heart-achingly sad. It also means once they're married, they'll start house hunting. Somewhere outside of the city but still close enough for both their jobs, where they can have space to be together without the world weighing down on them. Where they can have pets, and start a family. Bakugou had never really thought about being a dad, but the thought of that new adventure alongside Kaminari was starting to excite him. He's sure his parents will be thrilled by it as well, once they heard. As Bakugou drifts off to sleep that night, Kaminari held tightly in his arms, he can't help but smile at what their future holds. A few months go by, and the number one hero is too busy to be planning a wedding. Kaminari doesn't mind. He's not in a rush right now to get down the aisle. It helps that Bakugou is still spending his free time with Kami, still making their date night each week work, and does his best to keep to the work-life balance they had worked so hard to make. They were too busy to plan, mostly because whenever they had the time at home to start, Bakugou got distracted. And since he was distracted by Kami, he usually ended up getting dragged into the bedroom by his explosive boyfriend. Not that he minded one bit. Things are going so well for them, and Kaminari should have suspected such smooth sailing was bound to be broken. A request for a long-term, overseas collaboration went out on the Hero Network from the Hero Commission, asking for any heroes that could fit the criteria covered. But the one thing that stood out for the request was that they also wanted Ground Zero specifically to be one of the heroes on the mission. Kaminari saw the request at his own agency, and read through the whole thing. It was more of a publicity stunt than it was an actual request for help, and it should be easy for Bakugou to say no to, especially if Endeavor sided with him as his employer. And since he was there for the proposal, Kami doesn't think it will be a hard sell. With that worry out of his mind, Kami went about his day on desk duty, completing paperwork and chatting with other co-workers in the office. But when Kaminari got home, excited because their schedules had lined up and Bakugou would already be back from work, he saw a suitcase sitting by the front door. "Babe, is someone visiting us?" Kami called out, toeing off his shoes before walking further into the apartment. "Hey Firefly." Bakugou slips out of the bedroom, a bag slung over his shoulder as he leans down to press a beep to his forehead. "No, it's just us." "Oh, well I guess I was just confused by the suitcase by the door," Kami said warily, watching as Bakugou dropped the bag over his shoulder next to it. "No, this is for me. I'm sure you saw the memo go out. They said the mission will last at a minimum 3 weeks, so I wanted to make sure I had everything I need." He turns to smile at Kami before heading for the kitchen. "I got dinner started, go wash up and we can eat." But he doesn't do that, instead following Bakugou into the kitchen. "The mission the Hero Commission sent a request out for?" "Yeah, from this morning. You're not planning on going, are you?" The chopsticks Bakugou was holding hit the counter with an intimidating clack, and his shoulders shifted as he took a deep breath. When he turned back around, his face was neutral. "Yes, Denki. I am going on the mission. They specifically requested me. I can't exactly tell them no as the number one hero." "Yes you can, especially if Endeavor agreed with you, which of course he would if you asked him to." Kami clenched his fingers, feeling a nervous energy spark up his spine, desperate to make Bakugou understand. "As much as I wish that were true, they need me on that mission, and I plan on going." Bakugou turned back around, working on plating the food and placing it at their spots on the kitchen table. "Sit down and eat, we can talk more after dinner." "Talk more? Katsuki, there is nothing to talk about, you should not be going." "I am not having this argument with you Denks, if I'm needed then I'm going." He sits down and starts to eat, not even glancing up. But when he notices Kami not making a move, he gestures at the food. "It's gonna get cold if you don't hurry up." But Kaminari knew he needed to put his foot down. Bakugou had promised, and things had been going so well. "I read the case file too you know, and they do not need you. Sure, it will take 2 or 3 good heroes to replace you, but they will manage just fine if you stay home, like you had told me you would. It's only a few weeks, Denki, you're overreacting. Bakugou leaned back in his chair, fists clenched as they rested on the table. I've skipped out on every overseas and distant mission for months now. This will be the last one I do before we get married. I promise. Kami spun around to look away, frustration shooting hot and angry through him. When he felt like he could look at his fiancée without shouting, he turned back. And how should I know if you're going to keep that promise? You promised me when you put this ring on my finger that the overnight missions would end, and look how well you're keeping to that. Christ Denki. Enough of this shit. Bakugou pushed his chair back from the table, standing and marching to the living room where he started to pace. It's an easy-ing mission, I'll be just fine, it's only a few weeks. I know you'll be fine, you're the best, but that doesn't mean I want you to go. I want you to be here with me. Danks, I'm serious. I'm going on this mission, end of discussion. Why does it need to be you? Because Deku isn't planning on going, and none of the other top heroes want to either. Oh, so this is just another way to one-up Izuku, is that what you're saying? Your friendly competition for the #1 spot with him is more important than a promise you made to me. Hell, don't put words in my mouth, then make it make sense, Katsuki. I want to go, Denki. Bakugou roared, that's why.
Their apartment got quiet, Bakugou wincing like he hadn't meant to yell, but not making a move to apologize or to take it back. Kaminari felt a rock drop in his stomach, body going cold. I'm not going to change your mind, am I? He whispered, arms coming up to hug himself.
No, you aren't. Bakugou's gaze was steady, jaw set and determined. The look Kami would see when he was facing off against a villain that he needed to really think for, when he knew he was going to keep swinging for what he believed in. Kami never thought he would see such a determined face aimed at him, not like this. He lowered his head, eyes burning as he spun on his heels and hurried across their apartment, slipping quietly into the spare bedroom. The sound of the lock clicking into place echoed through their home. Bakugou stared at that door for a long time, waiting for Kaminari to come back out to continue talking. When he realized it may be a while before that happened, Bakugou slipped back into the kitchen, eating the rest of his now cold dinner. And after waiting a while for Kami to come and eat his own dinner, he decided to pack the rest up in the fridge for whenever he decided to stop hiding and eat. He had already packed everything he needed to leave tomorrow, so he sat down on the couch and turned on whatever program looked mildly interesting, hunkering down to wait for Kaminari to come out of the spare room. But before he knew it, it was already getting late. He had an early train to catch in the morning, and had been hoping to go to bed early. He turned off the TV and stood from the couch, his back cracking as he stretched. As he passed the spare bedroom he paused, debating knocking for Kami. His dinner was still in the fridge, untouched.
He hesitated when he held up his hand, eyebrows pinching when he thought he heard something. Ear pressed to the door, he listened as quiet sobs slipped through, the sound of Kaminari crying shattering something inside of him. A quick test of the handle told Bakugou it was still locked, and he hesitated a moment. Should he knock? Kami wouldn't have locked the door if he wanted to talk, though. Maybe he wanted space, but Bakugou had been hoping to spend the night before he left together.
After debating to himself for a few moments, he decided against it. Kami would come to him when he was ready, and he didn't want to overwhelm him before then. So he went down the hall to their own room, leaving the bedroom door open that they would normally close and lock while they slept. Also he would hear if Kaminari left the spare bedroom in the night. But after Bakugou's head hits the pillow, the first thing to wake him is the sound of his alarm going off. He heaves himself out of bed and hurries through his morning routine, hoping to catch Kaminari before he leaves. When he rushes out the bedroom, he can see the spare room's door is wide open, empty of his fiancée. He doesn't panic for long, coming into the kitchen to find Kaminari sitting at the table, still in yesterday's clothes and eyes rimmed in red. In front of him is a cup of coffee, sitting in a to-go mug and waiting for Bakugou. Something in his chest cracks at the sight of him. He wants to reach out and comfort him, seeing how defeated he looks. His normal energy and lively self is dimmed, looking wilted around the edges. Swallowing past the lump in his throat, Bakugou steps forward and presses a beep to his head. Kaminari barely moves. "I'll be back before you know it," he whispers, tilting his head to make eye contact.
But Kami stares back at him with something like heartbreak, shaking his head sadly. "Come back safe," he says, voice hoarse from crying. He hands him the cup of still warm coffee and slips away, back towards their bedroom, where the door clicked shut softly behind him.
Something like tears start to burn at Bakugou's eyes, but he takes a moment to steady himself. He needs to do this. He can prove to Kaminari that he can go on this mission and come back just fine, and that maybe he doesn't need to give up this part of being a hero when they get married. He makes a mental note to be sure to call and text Kaminari often, so he does not get lonely. Although he's more worried about getting lonely, at this point, he's unsure.
When the door closed behind Bakugou on his way out, Kaminari didn't know what to do with himself. He had cried out all the tears in his body last night, and didn't think he had any left.
He received a text from Bakugou that he was on his train, and would text when he arrived at the airport. The longer Kami sat there, the further and further Bakugou got from him. In the physical sense, but also in some weird sense of their relationship. He thought back to a conversation he had with Midoriya years ago, when he first moved in with Bakugou. Was this that point? Was he in too deep, and needed to ask for help?
It felt weird to talk to others about what happened in his relationship, mostly because all his friends were also Bakugou's friends. Kirishima was really the only person Kami ever talked to, and even then he always tried to defend Bakugou even as he complained about something.
It was weird, and he didn't like talking poorly about someone he loved so much, so maybe he had been bottling his feelings up a little too much over the years. A text pulled his attention, and he saw that Bakugou had arrived at the airport and would be turning his phone off soon. Kami sent a "safe flight" back and placed his phone back down. The train had been taking Bakugou far from him, but the plane would be even faster.
If he got lonely, it would take Bakugou forever to reach him. If he got hurt, or wasn't feeling well, or just needed a cuddle after a long day of work, his fiancée was too far to help.
He hated this. The shaking started soon after that. For a moment Kami was scared his body may shake apart with how hard he was trembling. Something inside of him fell out of alignment last night, or maybe it had gone missing. But either way, a small part of him that had been so precious, that could see the world around him in vivid colors and find the magic in each little mundane thing. The part that made his smiles so easy to summon and his laughter so bright. He couldn't find it anymore. He knew that if he went looking for it, he might find something he doesn't like. That if he dug too deep inside himself, he may find it shriveled and broken, and all that remains would be the scars he left behind while gutting himself to find its empty home. The world dulled around him. Sounds grated against his ears. He stopped feeling everything so fiercely. It all washed over him, moving past and leaving him behind. An unmoving rock stuck in the middle of a slow stream. Heart. Ever since graduation, Kirishima has watched as his friends grew, their fighting styles and abilities evolving. And maybe he was biased because he was one of his best friends, but Kiri thinks Kaminari has really come the furthest out of all of them. Something Kami had been working on and really getting the hang of recently was channeling electricity into different parts of his body, giving him a temporary boost. If sent to his legs he could run faster, if sent to his arms he could lift more, and so on. These new upgrades he could give himself were easier to do the more muscle he had in those areas, so the amount of times Kami joined Kiri and Bakugou at the gym had gone up in recent years. Unless disrupted by a patrol, recently Bakugou was always at the gym with Kirishima, and Kami was the one missing if he decided it wasn't worth the effort that day. But today was an anomaly in their routine. Kaminari was here without Bakugou.
"Come on, let's go do some cool-down stretches," Kirishima nudged Kami, walking over to the mats. The gym at Fat Gum's agency was nice, so Bakugou and Kaminari tended to join Kirishima there rather than the hectic and busy gym at either of their agencies. It had been a few days since Bakugou left for the overseas mission, and Kirishima was still pissed at him. His anger only grew the longer he was gone, because Kaminari had only gotten worse. At first Kami had seemed like a zombie, struggling to do much of anything. He had gotten better at that, but now he seemed almost resigned to the fact that Bakugou had left, like he had stopped fighting it. And since Kirishima was a bit more in the know than most of their friends with what goes on between the two of them, that pissed him off.
It wasn't very manly to break promises, and Kiri planned on having a long conversation with Bakugou about that when he got back.
Things had really changed after Bakugou proposed to Kaminari. All their friends had seen it. Kiri had been happy that Bakugou had found someone that meant so much to him, that it was worth fighting for. And not physically fighting, like with villains, that was second nature to Bakugou. But fighting in the sense of putting every effort and his best foot forward for their relationship. Fighting to grow with someone at his side, not running ahead and leaving them behind to catch up.
And Kiri had been happy for Kami, too, who had finally found someone that would love him wholly and unconditionally. Before he had started dating Bakugou, Kaminari had a few unsuccessful relationships with people he let get away with too much. His standards had been low, and Kiri had ended up stepping in a few times more than he wanted to. But with Bakugou, he had thought he wouldn't need to worry about his friend anymore. His disappointment was weighing heavily on him. "Oh, hold on, Katsuki is calling," Kami says, staring at the notification on his watch. Instead of answering on it, he reaches for his bag to grab his phone. Kirishima makes a face, confused. "Aren't you two fighting right now?" "Shush, Kiri." After a moment of shuffling, Kami grabs his phone and answers. Kiri would be lying if he said he didn't strain to hear Bakugou through the phone, but was stuck just hearing half of the conversation. "Hi Katsuki, thanks for calling. I'm glad you're alright." "I'm okay. I'm at the gym with Kiri." "Sure, I'll call you later, when I'm eating dinner." "Okay. I promise to eat something healthy." "Fiend, it can be a video call." "You'll get your proof, you damn mother hen." "Okay. Of course. Love you too, bye." Kirishima shook his head slowly, a sad frown on his face. That was a typical conversation between the two of them, with as much love and tenderness from his electric friend as he was used to when he wasn't fighting with Bakugou. Their conversations when they were fighting usually sounded very different. "Kami, you can't just let him walk all over you like this. I know he's a lot, but he's been doing better. You need to put your foot down."
God damn it Kirishima, I miss him. This wasn't their first time discussing this in the days since Bakugou left, and clearly Kami had enough of his butting in. "I miss him so much, it hurts. So yes, I am going to take every scrap of affection he sends my way while he's gone, and I will handle the fallout when he comes back, not a damn moment sooner." Kiri opens his mouth to reply, but pauses for a moment, watching him sadly. Arguing with Kami is only going to make things worse, and he doesn't want him to withdraw and think he can't talk to Kiri about these things in the future. "Alright, I won't say anything else. Why don't I bring the gang over tonight for dinner and some video games?" He can see that Kaminari knows it's just a tactic to make him feel less lonely, but doesn't seem opposed. "Alright, but only if we can order from that dumpling place around the corner from me." The apartment is always kept very clean with Bakugou living there, so there wasn't much Kaminari needed to do for it to be presentable for guests that night. Everyone sends their food requests to the group chat and Kiri swings by to pick it all up on his way there. The first to arrive are Jiro and Ishido, who chat away about their recent patrols while they help him set the table. Siro arrives next, still in his hero uniform and needing to borrow their shower and a change of clothes. Shinso sends his love, but he's on patrol. Siro tells them as he sits down, smelling fresh and hair still slightly wet. Jiro raises an eyebrow at him. Did he really say that? Siro shrugs. He was on his way out to patrol as I was leaving, so he didn't say much of anything. But I know in his heart it's what he was thinking. Kami giggled, already feeling loads better than he had all week. As the door opened once more, 2 more people walked in. Look who I ran into on my way here. Kiri boomed out, walking in with Midoriya. The greenette gives a shy wave, helping Kirishima to place the bags of food down on the counter. Hi guys. Sorry for intruding. I just offered to help Kirishima carry all the food. Please come in, how are you? Kami asks, rushing over to give his friend a hug. Do you have plans for dinner? Kiri picked up plenty of food, you should stay.
Are you sure? He asked nervously, edging himself back towards the door. Sit your ass down before one of us tries and fails to fight you, Ishido cheered, smacking the chair next to her in invitation.
Dinner devolves into drinking and games, giggles and embarrassing stories. Kaminari forgets about his worries for a while, even though every now and then he would turn to look at someone who wasn't there.
Before the night gets too late, Jiro turns to look at Kaminari. So what is going on with Bakugou? Kami shrinks in on himself a bit, and Jiro's eyes narrow. I'm sure you've been talking to Kirishima about it, but I'm worried too.
Yeah, you know you can talk to us, right? Zero asked, leaning forward with an elbow on the table to look at him from around Kiri. You can vent to us and it won't change any of our friendships with Bakugou, if that's what you're worried about.
Kaminari lets out a heavy sigh, reaching forward to play with his napkin. I know, it just felt weird to do. Almost like going behind his back, you know? Midoriya takes this opportunity to lean forward and take Kami's hand in his. It's not like that at all. Speaking from experience, I know that Kachan has a very strong personality, and is stubborn in his convictions. It's easy to feel like you're getting bulldozed over in those situations, and it's healthy to be able to talk to someone else about it. Yeah, it can help you collect your thoughts and get a clear image of what's happening, and how you feel about it, Mina chimed in.
That makes sense, Kami thinks, but still hesitates. Kirishima nudges him and gives an encouraging smile. Well, he starts, wondering how to even begin. I had thought things were getting much better. Our communication improved after I made the top 100, because we had a bit of a fight. Not a fight, you let him get away with murder and I had to tell him he messed up. Kiri corrected gently. Kaminari nods in concession. And a lot changed after that. He was never distant with me before, just always busy with work. But after that, he started taking less hours, and had more time to be with me, and even started doing little things to show me he cared. I'm talking flowers in the house when I woke up, romantic candle-lit dinners, preparing me bentos for lunch, a hot bath and foot massage after work. Is that a kink? Zero asked. Kiri elbowed him. He was really putting in more effort, and it meant so much to me. So eventually we talked about getting married, and I gave him a few must-haves if I were to say yes to getting engaged.
That's good, you set expectations. Ashido pats his leg, encouraging him on. What were they? Jiro asks, coming back with a few waters for everyone from the kitchen.
The most important one was stopping overnight missions. There was a collective gasp. They always start the worst fights between us. I don't like him being gone for so long, and it feels unnecessary to me for him to do his job far away or overseas when the stats tells us that it doesn't move you up the hero ranking any quicker. So I never understood his need to do them unless he was trying to spend time away from me. Everyone broke out in denial at that, Ashido loudly proclaiming how no one would want to be away from Kami. He gave her a sad smile. He always denied that as the reason too, but could never give me a concrete answer as to why they were important to him. The fights would get so vicious before he left, and even though he would always apologize after, he still would leave the next day. Kami remembers nights spent shouting at each other, ending with Kami in tears and hiding in their room until Bakugou came to bed. He would always pull him close, whisper how much he loved him, and that he was sorry for yelling. But he always emphasized that he was still going on the trip, and that he hoped Kami understood.
He never could understand, because Bakugou was never able to explain it to him.
But Bakugou still took care of him, bringing him to shower and get ready for bed. And every time, Kaminari caved to him, because he knew it would be the last time he saw him until he came back. Sometimes the night would end with quiet, emotional sex, Kaminari clinging to him like he was scared to let go.
And Bakugou would still go on the trip, no matter how heartbroken Kaminari was over it. Zero broke the silence. So then, what happened this time? When I saw the request go out, I immediately dismissed it, because he wasn't really needed, and the Hero Commission wouldn't be able to twist his arm into going.
But when I got home he was already packed, and told me he was going so matter-of-factly that I didn't know how to even respond at first. He started to pick at his cuticles before Jiro reached over to stop him. I got angry, and slept in the spare bedroom that night. And I thought, I don't know. We never go to sleep angry at each other like that. We typically work it out before we sleep, or at the very least remind each other how much we love them and go to sleep together.
Midoriya nodded along, like that made sense. Kaminari had a feeling he wasn't the type to let any negative emotion last long either, especially not overnight. I thought he was going to come find me, but he just went to sleep in the bedroom without me. And then the next morning he left. And oh, how Kami regretted that now. He could have spent the last night Bakugou was here curled up together in bed, but instead he spent it alone and crying. And now he was still alone. And Bakugou was much further away than the bedroom down the hall. And I miss him so much, you guys. I can't, it's so hard. But it just makes it harder knowing that he doesn't need me the same way I need him. His friends gave him a moment to collect himself, Ashido helping to dry his tears. Once he took a steadying breath, his friends picked the conversation back up. Denki, it might be time that you put your foot down with Kachan, Midoriya whispered, face sympathetic but serious. He needs to understand that he went too far this time. Relationships are a two-way street, and he should respect the things you tell him you need.
Everyone watches Kaminari silently while he digests that statement. His fingers go to the engagement ring on his hand, spinning it around his finger in a way he has picked up since it was given to him. He had started to reach for it more than any of the fidget toys he had grabbed for restless energy and anxiety recently, since it was a nice reminder of Bakugou's love for him. He paused at that thought, holding his hand up to look at it. It slides off his finger easily, and he barely notices the gang around him trading uneasy looks. When he gave this to me, he promised no more away missions. His friends stay quiet. He broke that promise.
Kaminari chewed on that thought for a moment, reaching out to hold onto Ashido's hand. She grips tightly back, grounding him to this moment. If Kaminari let this slide, then Bakugou would see that as permission to continue going on more missions that sent him far away for extended periods of time. And Midoriya was right. Kaminari can't just let it slide, not after all of their clear communication and expectations they set for getting engaged. Bakugou knew exactly what he had been getting into when he proposed. If he didn't want it, then he shouldn't have proposed. Until he can prove to me he meant what he said to me, Kami whispers, breaking the tense silence in the room, I'm going to give him this ring back. I won't marry him unless he can keep his word. Ashido gives him a supportive nod, squeezing his hand in both of hers. Siro shifts uncomfortably forward, leaning an elbow on the table. I'll support you no matter your decision, Denks, but isn't that a little bit much to call off the engagement? Shaking her head, Ashido speaks up in Kaminari's defense. I think it's justified. Like Kami said, he broke his promise. Why would he marry him unless he can prove he'll keep them? Midoriya gives a somber nod, his face pinched in worry.
Heaving out a heavy sigh, Kiri runs a hand through his hair. I think that calling off the engagement is going to send a really strong message to Bakugou. Which I get is kind of the point, but I just can't imagine how he'll respond, you know. Juro tenses slightly, giving Kami a worried look before beginning to talk. Maybe how he responds will tell Kami if he should keep fighting for him. Their group gets quiet at that, eyes turning to her as she continues. If he accepts that he ed up and puts in the effort, great. Kami can continue with the marriage. If he tries to turn this into something it isn't, or tries to talk Kami out of it while still not changing, then Kami knows to give up on him. The tension in the air snaps with a shaky breath from Kaminari before the tears start spilling, breath coming quicker. Around him he feels his friends rush to his side, someone dabbing his face with a tissue while someone else rubs his back soothingly. It hurts that it had to be voiced. That Kaminari has been contemplating it silently for a while now, whether it was worth it. If maybe he and Bakugou just weren't compatible, wanting such different things. That all these years together, they were just trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. As his friends spent the rest of the night comforting him, Kami couldn't help but think how much he missed his boyfriend. Once Kaminari had made his decision that he would put his foot down once Bakugou was back, it was all he could think about. Day and night, through every meal and shower, even when he was getting dressed in the mornings, he thought of what he was going to say to Bakugou when he got home. How to even start the conversation, especially because he knew it would take his boyfriend by surprise. Boyfriend, not fiancé. Because to be engaged, both parties involved have to want it. And right now, Kaminari didn't want it. And it almost scared him how calm he was when he thought about that. The phone calls with Bakugou continued, and Kaminari answered everyone that he was able to. He still missed him, still loved him. Every text and call sent a happy thrill through Kami, and he was a little nervous he would be lost in the excitement of having him back home again, that he would forget to even talk to him about how he was feeling. One of the few things keeping Kaminari sane while he waited for the end of Bakugou's mission was work. He got to see his coworkers and even friends from high school, help save people like he had always dreamed of as a kid, and went home most days too tired to stay awake with dread all night. It was on a particularly uneventful patrol when it happened. A petty thief had been robbing a bank, and Kaminari was the first to arrive at the scene. Guy could barely hold the gun, had clearly never done so before, and it took only a few minutes for Kami to talk him down to stop what he was doing. He let himself get cuffed and stayed calm, even regretful, when the police arrived. As the thief is being loaded into the cruiser, Kaminari notices a young girl being held by her mother on the other side of the police blockade that was thrown up to keep the civilians at bay, and she's wearing a Chargebolt t-shirt with a small cosplay-like replica of his hero costume's jacket, waving to him frantically. He can't help the warm smile as he tells the police officer he'll be right back, and jogging over to say hello. When he reaches them, a reporter that had been held back by police rushes to his side, microphone held aloft as the cameraman behind her squeezes past other civilians. Chargebolt, do you have a moment for a quick statement? Keeping his eyes away from the reporter, he comes to a stop in front of the little girl. Hi there, that's a cute jacket you have. The child squealed, shaking her mom's shoulder. Hi, I'm Rin. Well, it's nice to meet you. I'm Chargebolt, although it looks like you knew that already, he says with a smile. The girl's mother is watching Rin with a happy smile, and the reporter has moved away, letting the cameraman get a shot of the scene. Yeah, I'm your biggest fan. Rin suddenly reached over her mom's shoulder into the backpack she wears, whipping out a lightning-themed notebook and pen. Can I please get your autograph? Of course, he takes the notebook carefully and flips it open, seeing some pages of artwork of him and other heroes. These are really great, Rin, you're so talented. He finds a blank page and signs there, leaving a short message. It's a bit longer than he normally does, but there are no other kids in the crowd, so he's sure he has the time to spend on her. As he hands the small lightning-themed notebook and pen back to her, he puts on his most sincere smile and asks gently, please don't get so close to my fights with villains, okay? I'm more than happy to chat and sign things for you when I have the time, but I don't want you to get hurt during a fight. The girl's mother smiles gratefully, hand patting her daughter's back as the little girl focuses on his words with all the might in her little body. My main priority is making sure you and everyone else here stays safe, so help me do my job and be an honorary hero for me, okay? Rin seems delighted by that, nodding emphatically. I promise. Then one of the officers is tapping him on the shoulder, gesturing back to the police cars where more paperwork awaits him. He turns and sends Rin a smile. It was nice meeting you. As they walk back to the police cars, the ground begins to shake, swelling up until it's difficult to stand. The officer next to Kaminari stumbles, and he reaches out just in time to steady him. As soon as he's on his feet, Kami's hand goes to his earpiece. Dispatch, do you have an eye on what just caused that tremor? Before he can even register their response, we're looking into it. Kami watches as large chunks of plaster and cement hit the ground across the street. His eyes trail upwards, where he can see someone hanging onto the side of the building. The chunks hitting the ground are from him creating hand and foot holds for himself. The fact that he is hanging onto the building high above their heads is not the only worrying thing about the man. He's massive, perhaps even bigger than Bakugou or Kirishima, his muscles bulging and strained while holding the weight of himself up there. The gray outfit covered in spikes and chains screams villain. Whoever he is, he doesn't plan on hiding. Kami steps in front of the officer and shouts, "Start to evacuate everyone." Before rushing forward as the man leaps from his perch and hits the ground in the middle of the street, cracks in the asphalt spider webbing out from the impact. Ah, the sparky one saves the day from a petty criminal. What cause for celebration? He has a heavy accent, making it difficult to understand him. For a deranged moment, he reminds Kaminari of a villain from those pre-Quirk spider hero movies Zero is obsessed with, the guy with the huge muscles and the horn on his head. Dispatch is running commentary in his ear, but Kaminari focuses on the villain in front of him. His mic, however, is still open, so he knows his dispatcher can hear every word he says. I appreciate the encouragement, man, but that's quite some property damage your cute little entrance made. Can I ask who you are? He looks around, watching as civilians are hurriedly being directed out of the area by police. I am uninterested in sharing with you who I am. Well, now you've gone and hurt my feelings, big guy. Kaminari smirks, walking casually to position himself between the villain and the crowd. I'm Chargebolt. It would be nice to know what name to put on the paperwork when I hand you over to the police. What do you say? He laughs softly, but with how large the man is, it still echoes in the growing silence as more people are ushered to safety. You believe you can take me? You are so small, I could squash you with my pinky. Raising an eyebrow at him, he keeps the easy smile on his face as Dispatch whispers in his ear, Hero Deku is across the city fighting another villain, but he's been made aware of the situation and is wrapping it up as quickly as he can. We're also calling in Shoto, who is on call. We'll send him your way as soon as we can. Stall him until backup arrives, Chargebolt. Do not engage alone. He has only a second to process those orders. Out loud, he continues his signature light-hearted banter. I think you may be underestimating me. If you think I'll be so easy to crush, what's the harm in telling me your name? The man starts to circle Kaminari, the two making a wide arc around each other, slowly pacing to the other side of the street while keeping the same distance between them. I cannot tell if you are extraordinarily brave, or if you lack intelligence. Very well, Chargebolt. His name is pronounced slowly, as if the man needs to carefully sound it out. You may call me Cyclops. Well, it's very nice to meet you, Cyclops. Kami gives a short little bow, hand in front of his waist like a performer on stage after an encore. How about we get to know each other a little better? What made you come here today? The circling stops, and the two stare at each other. Police officers are at either end of the street holding the barricades, but Kaminari is the only hero in the vicinity. Heroes are such complacent things, no. You announce so grandly when you are leaving to help others. And now, one of the strongest heroes in this city is away. Cyclops grunts, and the muscles in his arms and chest puff up, stretching the fabric of his shirt dramatically. And now, I would like to rampage. Kaminari feels like he can't get air into his lungs properly. Katsuki. He's talking about pro-hero Ground Zero. The only thing that had been keeping this guy from going on a rampage was Kaminari's boyfriend being in the city. The presence of the frequently talked to hero had put enough fear into this man, this extremely strong, probably strength quirked out of his mind man, to make him be a good citizen and behave. And now Katsuki was away on a mission that was public knowledge, and that had given this guy the confidence to do whatever horrible things he wanted. Kaminari has only a moment to process the speed with which Cyclops launches himself at the police at the end of the street. In a smooth transition that he had been practicing, repeating in the gym over and over again until it became second nature, he feeds electricity to his legs and uses the boost it gives his muscles to launch himself in front of Cyclops, bringing his arms up and bracing for impact. The man hits him like a freight train, but he feeds more electricity to his arms and legs, feet digging into the ground to take the force of the attack. As soon as they grind to a halt, Kami tries to fire off a shock where they are connected, but the police are too close for a big enough burst, and Cyclops is able to jump back, putting more distance between them. Over the pounding of blood in his ears, Kaminari can hear the police moving the barricades even further back, helping civilians to move further away from the fight. Marvelous! Cyclops shouts, laughing heartily. How unexpected! The tiny doll does not shatter upon impact. I am impressed, Chargebolt. Very impressed. However, he leans down, preparing to rush him again. Can you survive many more hits? The good news is that Kaminari has the man's full attention, so he seems to have forgotten about the citizens and police. The bad news is that Kaminari has the man's full attention, and might just get beaten into a bloody mess before backup can arrive. Dispatch is quiet in his ear, but he knows that by now the helicopter flying overhead is beaming this fight to the public. They know not to interrupt heroes during a fight unless the information is crucial. Think, damn it, Kaminari braces himself, feeding more electricity to his legs. He needs to get the guy far away from the civilians and buildings around them. No telling if anyone has evacuated everyone from there yet, and Kaminari didn't want to fry any innocents today. Cyclops launches at him, and Kaminari dodges left, rolling and running towards the midway point between the police blockades. He needs to minimize third-party exposure. Cyclops laughs, running away, like small yellow rodent. He charges and Kami doesn't have time to move, feeding more power to his arms as he blocks. This time Cyclops must put more power behind his hit, because his arms snap back under the force and collide with his face, and he needs to feed power to his legs to jump out of the way. Blood drips down his face, and he worries momentarily about it blinding him. He needs to end this quickly, before half his vision is compromised. "I enjoy this little dance we are having," Cyclops tells him, his smile morphing from a small, amused thing to a feral showing of teeth. "But you have more bark than you do bite, I think. I will enjoy more being the one to squash you like a rodent. Come, Chargebolt, and be the first of my long list of conquests." The villain charges forward then, but Kaminari is ready this time. He dodges again, but mid-backflip he throws more energy into his arms and launches himself up in the air, moving fast. 10, 20, 30 feet before he's slowing down. Cyclops lets out another joyous laugh before jumping himself, launching like a large, meaty bullet towards Kaminari. They collide in mid-air, the momentum Cyclops built up moving them even higher. He's still laughing, like he's enjoying the game. But Kaminari grabs onto Cyclops and gives his own savage smile. He watches as a drop of the blood from his head drips down onto the villain's cheek, and Cyclops' smile dims. Heroes have one very well-known, commonly exploited weakness. Villains can use civilians as a deterrent to keep heroes from fully unleashing on them, and the fights become a lot harder when your focus is moving around to everything and everyone around you. Kaminari watches in slow motion as realization dawns on Cyclops, the smile fading from him entirely. Because now they are alone. Here in the air, they are far away from anyone else being hurt when Kaminari goes supernova. "Got you." There is a split moment where Cyclops struggles, trying in vain to throw Kaminari off of him, before he lets the power in his veins unleash in a flash. Later, he will get to see the footage. From the time Cyclops touches him in the air to the time they start plummeting only takes a few seconds. But to him, those seconds stretched out over a lifetime. Energy pours from him, and all he can think about is that little girl being held by her mother, watching the fight. How she told him he's her favorite hero. Gravity takes over and Kaminari cuts off the energy flow, his limbs going slack from the drain on his body. Cyclops is steaming, clothes tattered and burnt. He looks unconscious. Good, the police should be able to handle things once they're on the ground. His fan must have convinced her mother to stay nearby and watch. And if she isn't in the vicinity, he's sure she's watching the fight from where it's being broadcast. He just hopes her mother will cover her eyes. The ground is coming closer, and Kaminari can't get enough feeling back into his arms and legs to brace for it. He doesn't want his littlest fan to see him when he hits the pavement. Chargebolt. A flash of green, right before he passes out. The first thing Kaminari noticed was the pain. Small aches were scattered across his body, more concentrated in some spots, but not a single inch wasn't hurting him. The next thing that he noticed was rhythmic beeping. When he finally pried his eyes open, he saw the sterile white room he was in. The hospital. A soft snore alerted him, and he saw a head full of curly green hair resting on the bed next to him. Midoriya had pulled a chair over next to his bed, and fallen asleep waiting for him. Across the room, his boyfriend Rody was also asleep in a chair, legs contorted in a way that he was a small ball between the arm rests. And nowhere in sight was Kami's boyfriend. Sighing softly, Kaminari shifted his hand, hating the feeling of the IV in it but brushing the hair from Midoriya's eyes anyway. He didn't want to wake his friend, and figured if he was sleeping lightly that small touch would rouse him. He was right, and in a moment forest green eyes locked onto him. As soon as Kami smiled at him, however, those eyes watered, and next thing he knew he had an armful of crying hero, with a small bird nuzzling into his hair. "We were really worried about you, Sparky," Rody tells him, walking over from where Midoriya's crying had startled him out of his sleep. "You were only out for a few hours, so you haven't missed much." "What happened?" he asked, throat feeling raw. Pino hopped down from Kaminari's head and onto Midoriya's shoulder, cooing softly and rubbing gently against his cheek while he cried. Deku got there at just the right moment. You passed out from quirk fatigue, but he caught you just before you hit the ground. Midoriya sat up and accepted the tissue Rody passed to him, pulled from seemingly nowhere. Dating someone that cries as much as a Midoriya must make him always prepared for tears, but the villain is in custody. You did an amazing job. You really did, Midoriya told him earnestly, leaning forward to make watery eye contact. There was not a single civilian injury, and property damage was kept to a minimum. You did a textbook perfect job, Denki. That made most of the tension left in his body slowly leak out, and he sat back with a huff. He hadn't realized how worried he had been about everyone, but especially his young fan Rin. It was nice, knowing he had done something so good. And maybe it made him selfish, but his friends weren't the ones he wanted in the room with him right now. Has anyone spoken with Katsuki? Midoriya nodded. Rody spoke with him earlier. He glanced back at his boyfriend, silently urging him to explain. He and the team saw the fight on the news, so he watched the whole thing live. As soon as it was over he started blowing up everyone's phones, trying to get a hold of us. I was able to chat with him a little bit ago, and he spoke with the doctors as well. Rody leaned against the window and peered down the hall, watching as doctors and nurses bustled around the busy hospital floor. He booked the next flight home. I think it leaves in about an hour, if you want to call him. Midoriya handed him his phone, then mumbled something about snacks and took Rody out of the room with him. Pino stayed behind, sitting on Kami's knee and watching him with big, watery eyes. After taking a deep breath, Kaminari looks at his phone. He has dozens of missed calls from Bakugou, and even more worried texts. He scrolls through a few, some weird emotion boiling up inside of him before he presses call. It rings only twice before it's answered, a breathless, Denki. Whispered in his ear. Hi Katsuki, he whispers back, emotion thick in his throat. Thank, Bakugou breathes. Kami can hear the sounds of people talking and walking in the background, the sounds of an airport. I've been so worried, how are you feeling? Everything hurts, Kami tells him, gripping the sheets tight. I know, I'm sorry baby. There's so much emotion packed into that sorry, and Kami knows he's apologizing for much more. I am so sorry, Denki. You're coming back. His voice shakes, eyes filling with tears. He can't hide the way his breath trembles in his chest, and he can hear Bakugou swear on the other end of the call. Yeah, I'm getting to you as fast as I can. Just hold on a little while for me, okay? He sounds desperate, almost scared. The tears come faster, and Kami covers his mouth to stifle the sob that slips out. His voice is thick, but he forces out, I wish you had been here when I woke up. He heard a muffled sound come from Bakugou, and when he finally spoke it sounded just as emotional as Kami was sure he himself sounded. I wish I was too Denki, and it's my fault I wasn't. Is anyone there with you now? Kaminari felt his head spin a bit at the fact that Bakugou blamed himself. He got so lost in his thoughts he almost forgot to respond, but Pino nudged his hand gently to spur him on. Yeah, Izuku and Rody are here. They stepped out for a moment. Well, I'm glad you're not alone. I'll have to thank the nerd when I get back for looking out for you. There was a pause as someone spoke over the loudspeakers in the airport, and Bakugou let out a sigh. My flight is boarding. Want me to stay on with you until I make it to my seat? No, it's okay. Just text me once you're settled. Course, thanks. I'll be home in no time, just wait for me, okay? Kaminari shivered at how softly Bakugou spoke to him, a few more tears leaking out. I'll be waiting. I love you. I love you too, be safe. Both of them lingered, neither hanging up. Bakugou chuckled before whispering another, see you soon, before the line went dead. Left alone in the silence, Kaminari let Pino cuddle into his shoulder and neck while he gave himself a few moments to collect his thoughts and just breathe. The amount of emotion and regret coming from Bakugou in that conversation had been something Kami was not used to, and it struck something in him to see him breaking down in such a way. Eventually Kami just needed to stop thinking about it, a headache starting in his temples. To distract himself, He started scrolling through Twitter. Videos of his fight were all over the place, along with news coverage of the event. Just wanting something to fill the silence while he waited for his friends, he clicked on a video from right after his fight. A man in a smart suit and glasses sits at a table next to a gorgeous woman, hands clasped in front of him and staring at the camera very seriously. We have sources telling us that the villain, going by Cyclops, decided to go on a rampage because our beloved new #1 hero, Ground Zero, had recently left on an overseas mission. And this does not seem to be a very new idea, the woman adds. Looking at past data, attempted crimes tend to increase when well-known heroes travel from their normal routes. However, what villains do not seem to realize is that the heroes left behind are more than capable of handling the situation. Exactly, just look at what happened only moments ago. Ranking number 86 on the hero charts, and coincidentally, the woman sat forward, emphasizing this point. The boyfriend of Ground Zero, local hero Chargebolt showed everyone that you do not need to be high on the charts to do your job, and do it well. Well said, and Chargebolt is not the only hero ready to take on villains. Every single hero out there is prepared to fight for the safety of civilians in our superhuman society. And in happy news, Chargebolt was safely brought to the hospital by hero Deku, and we are being told he should make a swift and full recovery. Kaminari closed out of the video, leaning his head back against the pillows. It was nice to see the public talking about him, and he was sure that it would affect his standings in the hero rankings. But he doesn't care about his ranking, and there's really only one person he wants to see right now. Bakugou keeps a close eye on his phone during his train ride back after his flight. Denki and Deku both keep him updated with what the doctor told them, as well as when they arrive back at Denki and Bakugou's apartment. He can't stop bouncing his leg as he waits, getting closer and closer to his fiancée. Each stop that is not his makes him even more nervous at the time being wasted. Ever since he had seen Denki's fight, it felt like he was moving through molasses. He knew where he wanted to be, and yet he couldn't get to him quick enough. As soon as it's his stop, he's waiting in front of the doors and rushing out once they open wide enough to fit his broad shoulders. He had barely slept on the plane or the train, spending his time thinking about Denki, texting Denki, or demanding that Midoriya give him updates on his health, and the singular, foreboding, Kachan he had received in response had stopped him from texting the nerd again. Once he reaches the apartment he fumbles for the keys a moment, cursing under his breath until the door in front of him swings open from the inside. Deku and Rody are standing there, shoes and coats on. We'll be back in a bit, Deku tells him, sliding out past him. But Bakugou barely hears him, not when he can hear Denki moving around inside their apartment. Tripping in his rush to remove his shoes, Bakugou stumbles into the living room. Standing there, eyes wide and shocked, is Denki. He feels his heart shatter as he takes in the healing bruises on his face and arms, a patchwork of purples edged in yellow. A bandage across his forehead covers what Bakugou knows to be a nasty cut, held together with several stitches. Likely to scar, Kaminari said the doctor told him. But his hair would cover it easily. As if having a scar could make him any less beautiful. The moment tears start to well up in those golden eyes he missed more than he had thought he would, he's rushing forward, pulling Denki gently into his arms. I'm here, I'm so sorry it took me so long, he whispered into soft, freshly showered blonde hair, feeling fingers gripping his shoulders tightly. I've got you, Denks. Denki is leaning so heavily on him that Bakugou guides him to the couch, sitting down and letting him curl into his chest. It takes him a moment to realize that he's crying too, tears leaking out and into Kami's hair. He takes in an unsteady breath, hands smoothing over his fiancée's back. He's home, and he has no plans of leaving. Denki, he whispers, leaning down to try and look at his face. Denks, please look at me. The head buried in his chest shakes no, and he lets out a rattled laugh. Please baby, I've been so worried, I just wanna see you. Finally Denki looks up, those eyes now rimmed red and puffy, sniffling past the snot in his nose from crying. Hi. Running his thumb under Denki's eye to collect a tear leaking out, he takes a moment to look at him. Hey, he leans forward, pressing his lips against his cheek. He feels the sigh Denki lets out, leaning into the touch. I cannot tell you how scared I was when I saw that fight, Firefly. I can't imagine. It's hard not to notice the mullish tone Denki has, and Bakugou pulls back. Sorry, I didn't mean to make this about me. I know how scary it must have been for you. He gives his waist a squeeze, mindful of the bruises probably scattered across his body. You were so brave. I needed you here. Bakugou's breath catches in his throat, eyes immediately misting over. Those 4 words hit him harder than any villain ever has, harder than any argument they've had in the past. I know. I'm so sorry. No, you don't. I needed you. Denki sits back to stare at him, eyes sharp, even through the tears. The grip he has on Denki's waist tightens, like he's scared of him getting up and leaving. The need to touch him, to feel that he's here and okay, is overwhelming. Denki, I can't, I'll never forgive myself. I'm so sorry. I should have stayed. I should have listened to you. He squeezes his eyes shut tight in hopes of fighting the onslaught of tears making his chest heave. You're my whole world. I shouldn't have left like that. Fingers brush over Bakugou's cheeks, making him open his eyes. Denki doesn't look angry at him, but he looks sad. Not just for the fight against Cyclops, Katsuki. I needed you during my time off. When I was at the gym. Buying groceries, cooking dinner. At night when I was laying in our bed alone. Denki takes a deep breath, the words just rolling from him, like now that he's started he can't hold them back. I needed you that night after our fight, when I slept in the spare room and you didn't chase after me. I need you every moment of every day, like I need air to breathe. A shaky exhale, and I'm giving you this engagement ring back until you think you can give me what I need. Because I can't live like this anymore, Katsuki. His mind goes blank. He glances down between their chests, where trembling fingers are holding the gold band and diamond. Bakugou knew those hands, was familiar with the way they reached out to help him, how they felt under his lips when he beeped his palm or fingertips in a moment of overwhelming emotion. Knows how they tremble right before he comes, how the nails dig into his back and shoulders when they're entwined. He's seen those hands save lives, shoot lightning. He's seen them broken, in casts. Those hands have held him when he needed support, and have reached for him when Denki needed it in turn. Those hands have given and given to Bakugou, have accepted everything he gives back, even the ugly things. They've soothed him, comforted him, lifted him up without putting him on a pedestal. Those hands have held onto him so tightly that Bakugou didn't realize how loosely he was holding them back until Denki's grip faltered. This was Bakugou's fault. And now he's seeing those hands shake as he pushes his engagement ring back to him. The symbol of their love, of the promise to twine their lives together forever. Given back, because Kaminari needed more, had been asking for more. And Bakugou just didn't. He'd grown comfortable, thinking that Kami would stay with him no matter what. Thinking he could just keep cruising the way he was for the rest of their lives. As he stared at that ring being held by those hands he loves instead of worn on his finger, being returned, he thought back on all the reassurances Kami had ever given him, and realized he had never reciprocated them. That the few times Kami had requested anything from him, damn reasonable things Bakugou was just realizing now that he wanted as well, too late. His mind chanted that when it really mattered he had either not given it to Denki, or gone back on his word. His own hand shaking, he takes the ring back. He opens his mouth to say something, which he doesn't know, because the words get stuck in his throat alongside a sob. Kami is crying now too, and Bakugou leans behind himself to place the ring on the table, before wrapping his arms around Kami and pulling him closer. I'm so sorry, he whispers, tears flowing. Please don't leave me. I love you, I'm sorry. He apologizes over and over, holding Denki tight to him. And whether he deserves it or not, he listens as Denki tells him he isn't going anywhere, that he just needs time before they can do anything more permanent with their relationship. And deep inside, Bakugou knows. He understands. He did this to them, and has been doing it to them for a long time. It shouldn't have taken a fight like this scaring him so badly to make him decide that he wanted to change for the better, to give Denki what he's been asking for years. He should have done better, sooner. Now he's hanging onto their relationship with a thinning thread, terrified as he watches it pull taut. He doesn't want what they have to break. He needs to fix this. When Deku gets back with Rody, he immediately asks Bakugou to come with him to get food. Rody will wait with Kaminari. Come on, Kacchan. Give him a moment to breathe. After setting Denki down on his own feet and staring at him for a moment, he pressed a soft beep to his forehead, right next to that cut he knew was hiding under the gauze, and followed after his childhood friend. As they walked the quiet streets in silence, Bakugou knew there was more than one reason Deku had pulled him from the apartment. Partly it was for Denki, he's sure, to let him take a moment and calm down. But he also knew Deku, and the two of them had never held back with each other. He could feel the lecture brewing, the confrontation he wanted to have over how poorly Bakugou had treated one of his friends. Might as well rip the band-aid off now as opposed to waiting for Deku to overthink how to start the conversation. I know I ed up. Do you? I do. And has the gravity of what you've done, what you've been doing, really sunk in yet? His hands start to shake then, his feet slowing to a stop. The street they are on is empty, and Bakugou realizes that everything is getting fuzzy because he's crying. He can hear Deku stop walking, but he keeps his eyes trained to the ground, fists balls at his sides. But red shoes come into view all the same, and Bakugou can't run from this. All the battles he's fought, all the villains he's faced down, never had he showed this much fear or cowardice. You're terrified of losing Kaminari, in a way that you were never terrified of losing me. His head snaps up at that, brow furrowed. It isn't a competition, it never was. They hadn't worked out together, and like every other rough patch in their friendship, they paved over it with a more solid foundation, and carried on. Both found people that made them happy, and neither held a grudge. Not anymore. Deku, that isn't. Hold on, I'm not finished. Deku says, holding his hands up in a placating gesture that clashes with the harsh truths he hits Bakugou with. You knew you wouldn't lose me because we've always been friends, and we always find a way to work through our differences. It may have taken a long time, but there was no fear of me leaving your life completely. Green eyes sharpen, glaring at him. But I think, deep down, you know that it wouldn't be the same with Kaminari. Bakugou's breath catches in his throat. You don't want it to work out how it did with me, and be just friends. You love Kaminari in a very different way, and you need him. That sentence alone felt like a death knell for Bakugou. Deku was right, he needed Denki in his life. He had realized that once, laying in a hospital bed watching Denki fall apart in his arms from the fear of Bakugou being hurt. Had decided to propose to him when he had made that discovery. And yet now, the stubborn asshole that he is, he needs to be reminded in the worst possible way. Besides, Kami will handle this in his own way. If you lose him like this, I don't think you'll have him in your life at all. Even as a friend. Bakugou let out a desperate sound he didn't realize he was capable of making. Deku's face softened, but he kept pushing forward, trying to make sure that Bakugou understood. I'll never sugarcoat things for you, Kacchan, you deserve to hear the truth. And I know it hurts you for me to say it, but I need you to understand how important this is. You need to handle him with care. His friend turned and walked away, leaving Bakugou standing there with his thoughts. The next few weeks felt like a strange transition period. Like the moment when a caterpillar went into their cocoon, and Kaminari was waiting to see what came out. Never in their relationship has Katsuki clung to Kami the way he has in the days following his return. He had almost expected him to distance himself after Kaminari had returned the engagement ring and called off the wedding planning, but his boyfriend surprised him by doing the opposite. He took off from work and stayed home with Kaminari for the entire bed rest the doctor had ordered, cooking every meal and doing all the shopping, making sure Kami didn't need to lift a finger before the doctor gave the all clear. And Kaminari soaked it all up, letting himself be carried to the kitchen for breakfast, allowed the foot rubs, and showered together. Letting Katsuki wash his hair for him, deft fingers running through electric blonde hair, entangling the strands and slowly moving down to massage at the base of his neck. He would pounce as soon as Bakugou sat down next to him on the couch, curling up against his chest and into strong arms. He thought it might be too much at first, but when he tried the first time Katsuki let out a sigh of relief, pulling him even tighter against him. It felt like home. For Kaminari, All these small things were reassurances that Katsuki was here, right within reach. He needed to be touched by him and feel him nearby, confirmation that his boyfriend was close for him to rely on. For the first time since Bakugou had told him of his away mission, Kami could fully relax and let the tension slip from his body. And it seemed all the closeness soothed something inside Bakugou as well. Kami was paying close attention to his boyfriend, and he saw the shattered look in his eyes when he thought Kami wasn't looking. And he also saw the way those ragged edges smoothed out when Kami reached for him. Kaminari was determined not to go back on breaking the engagement, but he wanted Katsuki to understand Kami hadn't given up on them yet. That this may be a stumbling block in their relationship, but Kami could still see the two of them working through this together. Kaminari had been cleared for work by the doctor, and starting Monday he would be returning to his normally scheduled patrols. So far they had spent their Saturday curled up on the couch together before he suggested takeout again and Bakugou angrily shut it down, shuffling into clothes to go to the store for groceries. Basking in the quiet of the apartment, Kami decided to spend his time waiting for Bakugou in a nice hot bath, the first he was able to have now that all of his bandages have been removed. As he eased his somewhat stiff muscles into the hot water, he noted that he would need to stretch thoroughly before his patrols if he didn't want cramps on his first day back. As he was luxuriating in the soapy water, scented with one of his favorite bath bombs, he heard the door to their apartment open and a moment later rustling started in the kitchen, but he ignored it in favor of continuing to soak. Kaminari had been relieved when the doctors cleared him for work, but Bakugou had been more tense ever since. He knew that his boyfriend had a fierce desire to protect, even if it was more of a, I can protect people if I win fights, mentality, but that desire had seemed to increase towards Kami when the two had started dating. It had never gotten in the way of their relationship or work, of course, but it had shown itself in little ways during their normal interactions. And Kaminari worried that after seeing him so hurt, those desires would be even greater. Especially if Bakugou thought there were still unresolved issues between them, causing uncertainty in their relationship. So maybe now was a good time to talk, and explain to Bakugou where his head is at. After dressing in some of Bakugou's soft, well-worn clothes, Kami wanders into the kitchen where something smells amazing. He stands in the doorway for a moment, watching fondly as Bakugou scoops their meal into bowls and sets them on the table, laying out chopsticks and getting them glasses of water. His shirt pulls tight as his broad shoulders move, muscles flexing as he works. The two had been cuddling more, and Bakugou had never been so touchy thus far in their relationship as he has been since the fight with Cyclops, but they hadn't really been intimate since before Bakugou had left on the extended mission. Kaminari would be lying if he said he didn't miss doing more with Katsuki. But that line of thinking just flustered him, so he leaned forward and set himself walking into the room. "Thanks for cooking dinner, babe," Kaminari whispered, lips pressed to Bakugou's temple as he passed his chair to sit down on his own. "Course," Bakugou grunted back, already picking up his chopsticks and ignoring him in favor of food. But as soon as Kami was seated, he felt his boyfriend's knee shift to press lightly against his thigh, a calming presence keeping them connected while their hands were busy. He smiled into the rim of his cup, eyes peeking up to see the light pink flush covering the tips of his ears. It wasn't long before the food was gone and dishes were cleaned. But instead of sitting down in Bakugou's lap when they moved to the living room to watch TV, the way Kami had been doing recently, he sat down next to him, facing away from the TV to stare right at him. "I want to talk to you before I go back to work." Bakugou clicks his tongue, arms crossed and looking away, defenses already raised. Kaminari leans forward to touch his bicep softly, fingers trembling lightly. "I know it's stressing you and I don't want that. Can we please talk? It's okay if you want to wait till tomorrow." Bakugou let out a sigh, but Kami watched as his shoulders relaxed the longer they sat in comfortable silence. Eventually, nervous red eyes made their way to Kami, darting across his face. "You know I love you, right?" Bakugou, startled at the confession, and even after all these years of hearing it, blushed. "I know." His hand reached forward and grabbed Kami's, pulling it into his lap and holding it gently. "Then you have to know I'll be as careful as I can be when I go back to work. I want to save people, that's why I'm a hero," but I also want to come home to you every night. I promise to be careful and do my best. I wasn't worried, Bakugou whispered, but he held fast to Kami's hand, eyes pinched and darting around the room. They sat in silence for a moment, Kaminari playing with the fingers of Bakugou's hand as his boyfriend chewed on his thoughts. After what felt like a lot of time, Kami leaned his forehead against his shoulder, and whispered to him, "Lack of communication has done a lot of damage to our relationship, Katsuki. I need you to be honest with me." Red eyes glanced up at him with something like regret, and his thumb swiped gently across the back of Kami's hand. "You're right, I don't want to let you out of my sight, I'm so scared. And I know it's stupid to feel this way, you're perfectly capable. If anything, that fight showed me even more what a great hero you are. I'm just..." He let out a frustrated huff and leaned back on the couch, face tilted up to the ceiling. "You know," Kami whispered, leaning into Bakugou's side. "All those times I asked you not to go overseas, or to work less, this was how I was feeling." He could feel that stare on the side of his face, but he kept looking at the edge of the coffee table, fidgeting his fingers with the sleeve of Bakugou's shirt. "I wasn't just putting my foot down for no reason, even though I also felt like it was stupid to be so worried all the time, especially with how amazing you are. We risk our lives every day, it's a part of our job, and also just a part of who we are. But heroes are more likely to die young, and I want to spend as much time with you as I can, in case." He blinks and watches a tear fall onto his hand and realizes he's crying. He hastily wipes them away before meeting his boyfriend's eyes. "In case one of us doesn't come home one day." Katsuki lets out a rough breath, and Kaminari is startled at the sight of tears in his eyes. Strong hands pulled him forward, one cupped behind his neck and the other on the small of his back, causing him to arch into Bakugou's chest. "I didn't mean to cause you so much trouble." "So serious, Katsuki," Kaminari chuckles, but the emotion catching in his throat gives him away. "You weren't causing me trouble, I've had a great time being together with you. We've hit some rough patches, sure, but we always get through them. You want to be number one, and to do that you put yourself in more fights, in more danger, and it paints a bigger target on your back. But that also means you save more lives, inspire more people, and leave this city safer than you found it." Kami's fingers carved through Bakugou's hair, smiling through his tears. "Because yes, being a hero is who we are. But it's also our job, which means we need to be able to stop and be just Katsuki and Denki sometimes." He presses a beep to Bakugou's temple. "At some point we need to recenter ourselves, and by doing that we make it so that we're even more prepared to go out and save lives. We can't pour water from an empty cup, we need to take care of ourselves before we run around trying to save others." The longer he talks, the more relaxed he can feel his boyfriend become, tension leaking from his muscles and body melting into his hold. "I just want to be close to you and spend more time together, Cats. I want to make the most of the time we have outside of work." Hands tighten on him before loosening, and Bakugou pulls back to gaze at him. "Yeah, I get it now. Sorry for taking so long." A peace settled over Kaminari that he hadn't felt in a long time. As he stared into Bakugou's sincere eyes, burning red with motivation for something that wasn't that number one spot, he knew that the two of them would be okay. And if the TV stayed off, and they didn't sit on the couch for long before Kaminari was being carried to their bedroom, well, that wasn't for anyone else to know. It's a quiet day on patrol with Tokiyami when the discovery is made. "Let's make a detour on our way back to pass through the park," Tokiyami says as they make their way back to the agency. Dark Shadow enjoys when the leaves start to change color. "Yeah, sure." Kaminari skips ahead, glancing around at the people enjoying the chillier weather, taking pictures and huddling together with warm drinks. "I do enjoy the colder weather, the outfits and jackets are always so cute. My wardrobe doesn't change with the seasons." Kaminari giggles at his friend, who shoots him a long-suffering look. "But I will admit, I also enjoy the changes in the leaves. Seeing all the different colors is quite satisfying." "I guess I agree, but it's just all blobs of color." Kaminari shrugs, walking along and staring at the fuzzy mess of leaves around them. "Blobs." He nods absently. "Yeah, it's just all the colors melted together until you get close enough." Tokiyami stood still for a moment, dark shadows' head bounced back and forth between the two of them. Denki. Yes. Tokiyami stares at him meaningfully before glancing down the street, and Kami pauses alongside him. Can you read that sign, at the end of the street? Kaminari's eye follows where he is gesturing. No, that's way too far away. Kaminari, that is not too far away. I can read it perfectly from here. It says no littering. Many people can read that from here, and those that cannot get glasses. Slowly, Kaminari turns and blinks at his friend. Tokiyami isn't the type to play a prank like maybe Shiro or Shinso would have. Wait, are you telling me I need glasses? Tokiyami sighs. Let's head back to the office and let Hawks know. He can probably get you an appointment today. Sometimes being a hero has its perks. Like vision being super important for your job, so important that you can get a pair of glasses the same day you go to the doctor. Tokiyami was kind enough to join him, since they needed to dilate his eyes seeing as he had never actually been to an eye doctor before. These things just get away from me, you know. You're a hero, you need to take better care of yourself. If you think Katsuki isn't going to forcibly schedule and bring me to my appointments once he knows I need them, then you don't know my boyfriend very well. Good, he should be taking care of you. Darkness knows you can't do it yourself. Hey, so back home he goes, a new addition resting gently on his nose. On his walk back, he pauses in the same park they had passed through earlier. Oh my god, you really can see each individual leaf from here. Someone nearby giggles, but Kami is too distracted to notice who. The weight of the glasses is strange, and the difference in vision between seeing clearly through the glass and his peripheral being fuzzy is a bit jarring. The new clarity and sharpness of the things around him is starting to give him a headache. But the ability to see everything in the distance so clearly outweighs the temporary pain, as the eye doctor told him he would adjust soon enough. His walk home takes him a bit longer than normal, constantly getting distracted by details and things he had never noticed around him. So when he opens the front door, he hears a somewhat perturbed boyfriend call out from the kitchen, "Would it kill you to text me if you're going to be so late?" Sorry, but it was for a good reason. Kaminari rushes to take off his shoes in the entry, stumbling into the kitchen with a big smile. Look, Bakugou was wearing the apron Kami had bought them back before they were dating, the one that said, "Please do nothing to the cook," with a thin hairband holding his hair back off his forehead while he prepared their food. For a moment Kaminari was distracted by how comfortable and welcoming his boyfriend looked, but snapped back into focus when the chopsticks he was holding hit the floor. Kaminari's eyes traveled from the utensils on the floor back up to Bakugou's face, a grin slowly spreading. Well, that's certainly a reaction I hadn't been expecting. Carmen red eyes sharpened from the soft surprise they had been wide with, glaring before stepping past the mess on the floor to reach up and cradle his face gently, thumb swiping over the apple of his cheek, just below the edge of the lenses. Are these real, or just for style? Real. Tokiyami made me realize I needed them. Did you know that you can see the shapes and colors of the leaves from the ground? Kaminari hopped excitedly, hands gripping onto Bakugou's wrist gently. Hawks got me an appointment right after my patrol, and apparently I'm nearsighted. Kind of funny, I never noticed before, but I guess I always sat kinda close to the front of the classroom, and I may be just a little bit oblivious to most things, so. His thought is cut off abruptly when a finger boops him on the nose, and he glances wide-eyed up at the soft smile on Bakugou's face. Well, they really suit you. Then he brushes the hair back from his forehead and presses a gentle beep to the side of it, lingering for a moment on the soft pink scar there before turning back to the kitchen. Go get washed up, dinner will be ready soon. Then you can tell me all about your day. Oh, Kaminari blinks, for a moment feeling exactly like he had back in UA when his quirk would overwhelm him and his brain would stop working. Yeah, I'll be right back. Once in the bathroom, Kami peeks at himself in the mirror. He slips his glasses on and off again, comparing. He's not sure what Bakugou has seen that made him look so lovestruck at him, but Kaminari supposes the glasses don't look half bad. As Bakugou is setting the table, Kaminari scurries out of the bedroom fresh and still a little damp, wearing mismatched socks, no pants and one of Bakugou's shirts that he thought had been missing for a few weeks now. It's so long on Kami it stops about mid-thigh. And to top it off, he's wearing those goddamned glasses. The desire to screw dinner and bend him over the table is a strong urge, but instead Bakugou merely pulls the place setting for Kami right next to his own and grabs Kami by the slim waist, plopping him right on his lap. Babe. He glances up into those golden eyes framed by thick black frames. The amusement in them is clear, but Bakugou cannot wait to see them glazed over with lust. Are you going to be able to eat with just one hand? Gentle fingers poke at the arm wrapped firmly around his boyfriend's waist. I'll manage, he grits out, using his free hand to pick up his chopsticks and lean closer to the table to bring the food to his mouth. The tinkling laugh is worth the embarrassment, Kaminari relaxing into his chest as he talks between mouthfuls of food. After they're done eating, for maybe the first time ever, Bakugou leaves the dishes where they are on the table as he carries Kaminari straight to the bedroom, teeth and tongue on his neck while Kami giggles. Once in the room and the door kicked shut behind them, Bakugou takes his time to gently lay Kaminari down on his back, hair fanned out around him and glasses perched gently on his nose. Before their lips meet again, Kami lets out a quiet, "Wait, let me take these off," and reaches for his glasses. But before he can touch them, Bakugou reaches up to stop him, gently wrapping his fingers around his wrist to pull his hand away from his face. Kaminari blinks in confusion, but Bakugou keeps moving down, not stopping to answer the question in his eyes. He watches the moment Kaminari's eyes gloss over as he forgets about his glasses. And Bakugou can't stop staring as his boyfriend falls apart under him. It hasn't been easy going back to work, but they've managed. And if Bakugou texted Kaminari a whole lot more that first month back to work, and if he got antsy if he didn't get a reply right away, he tried not to let it show. But he was working with Deku more frequently, so of course it didn't take him long to notice, and one day he pointed it out in that annoyingly sweet and concerned way. So he forgave you. Yes, nerd, he forgave me. Not that I deserve it. He gave a side eye to Deku. That seems to be a theme with the people in my life. The damn nerd just sends him a happy smile, skipping along next to him. That's because we know you beat yourself up over these kinds of things in a more effective way than we ever could. So, what have you been doing to make it up to him? You mean besides all the meals I cook him, and forcing him to barely even walk while he was on bed rest? Deku shot him a knowing look, and Bakugou sighed. I've been trying to think of a damn vacation to take him on, okay. As expected, Deku gasped dramatically, eyes wide as he hopped excitedly in place. Oh my god, Denki will love that so much. Have you told him yet? No, and you sure as aren't going to be the one to tell him, he snaps, glaring at Deku as the nerd mimes zipping his lips shut and throwing the key away. I'm trying to surprise him, but I haven't thought of anything good yet. Well, Deku pondered, his finger touching his chin as he looked off to the side as he thought. Are you trying to stay local, or go away for a trip? I want to travel. Since normally I would go places without him for work, I think it would be nice to travel together. Bakugou could picture it now, Denki's head resting on his shoulder while they sat on the plane, or watching him run ahead in excitement when they grabbed their luggage from baggage claim. Seeing Kami so excited and relaxed, away from the responsibilities of being a hero and out of sight from all the fans that recognized them on sight, uniform or not, would be something that Bakugou hasn't seen since high school. And that may be exactly what he needed. What about a cruise? Bakugou's head snaps up. What? Deku smiles at him, big and way too proud of himself. A cruise. Mom and All Might did one together recently with your parents, and they all loved it. You should do that with him. He imagined it for a moment. Denki, with windswept hair, walking around in nothing but swim trunks most days. Snorkeling with those big dorky goggles on. Probably talking Bakugou into wearing stupid matching shirts with dorky tropical prints on them. Fancy dinners and dancing on the ship, fireworks shows, returning back to a spacious room where they could shower together and then. That's getting ahead of himself. But a cruise didn't sound like a bad idea. Good idea, nerd. Such little praise, and Deku was beaming, skipping and swinging his arms jauntily at his sides the rest of their patrol. Bakugou heaved a sigh and started a mental list of things he needs to research for a cruise vacation. By the time Bakugou did his research and booked them a 2-week cruise, Deku had confessed that keeping it a secret had been impossible for him, and now Rody and the Deku squad knew what Bakugou was planning. He chased the nerd around the office for almost an hour before Burnin shouted at them both. Denki was still in the dark, so Bakugou took the warning as a sign and decided to tell him about the cruise that night. First he messaged Kami's boss to take the time off for him, then when Kami came home, Bakugou romantically whipped out the tickets and shoved them in his face. Luckily, and for some mysterious reason, Kaminari loves him enough to see past how he makes an ass of himself when he's nervous, straight through to the heartfelt intention behind his gesture. He watched as Kaminari stared for a moment at the pieces of paper, the gears in his head visibly turning, and rightfully so since it was shoved in his face with no explanation. His eyes jumped back and forth across the page, taking in the name and dates on the sheet. Is this a cruise? Yes. For us. This is for next week. I know. Wait, are we going on a cruise together next week? Yes. A fond smile crept across Bakugou's face, arms still crossed as he watched Kaminari's jaw drop open, his head snapping up and down to look between the papers and Bakugou. For real and serious. Very real, very serious. Bakugou takes a step forward, drawn to Kami in a way that he feels like he could never fight against. He has been unable to prove this with science yet, but something about Kami's quirk must make him like a magnet, because nothing else could explain the dramatic pull Bakugou feels towards him. Oh my god, like, you mean together. Kaminari has placed the papers down on the kitchen table now, staring up at Bakugou with wide, golden eyes. They sparkle with excitement, but Bakugou can see the doubt in his face, the set of his brows tense and pulled in ever so slightly. Trying not to get his hopes up, something in Bakugou's chest caves in, a familiar feeling in these past few weeks that he doesn't think he'll ever get used to. The pain of what he's done, the years of not trying enough, or not giving enough of himself to this person he loved so deeply, still aches in his chest. He steps forward once more, erasing the space between them and pulling Kaminari in with gentle arms. I've already called and scheduled my time off, and even called your agency to schedule your time off, you just need to text them to confirm. I've broken out the luggage, and started making a list of things we need to pack. Kami lets out a wet gasp, wrapping his arms around Bakugou tight. We're going to go on a cruise together. Bakugou pulls back to look at his boyfriend, his golden eyes swimming in tears, lashes wet. Bakugou has seen Kaminari cry a few times over the years, whether it was at a sad movie, or happy tears at a friend's wedding. But he is always surprised at Kami's effortless ability to look beautiful while he cries. You'll have my undivided attention on the open seas for 2 whole weeks, Bakugou whispers, fingers trailing over Kami's chin to tilt their faces closer together. Kami's lips tremble even more, a fresh wave of tears spilling over. Bakugou laughs as arms latch onto his shoulders, small but powerful legs jumping and wrapping around his waist as Kami attaches himself to Bakugou like an octopus. I love you so much, comes a wet, muffled voice from his shoulder. I can't believe you did this for me. Bakugou presses a gentle beep to Kami's temple, closing his eyes and fully relaxing now that they're both home and in each other's arms. There's nothing I wouldn't do for you, thanks. And he has plans to prove that to him, as many times as it takes, for Kami to never have to question it again. The days leading up to their vacation were spent with each other almost every chance they got. Kami would feel his excitement like a physical thing, and was sure that he had accidentally shocked Bakugou in his enthusiasm but received no complaints. If anything, Bakugou would pull him closer in those moments, making Kaminari's heart flutter in a way he hadn't felt in so long. They had almost everything they needed for their vacation, but did go shopping for new swimsuits together. Bakugou had not gone swimming in so long. When he tried his swim trunks on, they got stuck halfway up the muscular tree trunks he called thighs. Kaminari was in a similar situation, his trunks ripping straight down the middle when he bent over to grab the next pair to try on. Although the way Bakugou was able to finger him through the gaping hole in the shorts was a great way to pass the time before they were unceremoniously thrown into the trash. And so a trip to the mall was in order, since they didn't have the time to order something online. They share a changing room while trying everything on, and though Kaminari tries his best to start something, and that cheeky look on his face with the blush high on his cheeks is hard to resist, Bakugou holds strong and they're done choosing swimsuits within an hour. On the way home, Kami convinces him to stop for ice cream, and that's where they are interrupted, a reporter stepping into their path and snapping a picture as Kami hums happily, licking his ice cream and holding Bakugou's hand, who is too busy carrying the bags and watching his boyfriend notice the man until they are practically on top of him. The flash of the camera catches them both off guard, the paparazzi not even saying a word to them before rushing off. Kaminari glances over to Bakugou, expecting some kind of frustration or anger, but his boyfriend just raises an eyebrow at their retreating back before continuing to pull Kaminari along on their way back home. He hums happily, holding his ice cream out and watching with a warmth in his chest as Bakugou leans down to take a lick. Later that night the picture of them is posted online by a more disreputable hero gossip blog. The caption is, "Top hero Bakugou seen with fellow pro hero Kaminari, friends, or something more." He laughs lightly at it, opening the comments to see people debating, some of them posting video clips from when Bakugou was named the #1 hero and he mentioned being thankful for him. But what surprised him the most was the notification he got that Bakugou had posted, opening it to see him quote-tweeting the post with a picture and caption of his own. The picture was the two of them on the couch, Kaminari having clearly fallen asleep on his shoulder, Bakugou beeping his head and taking a selfie of the two of them. It was a new picture to him, and Kami couldn't help the blush from how gentle Bakugou looked at him in it. Moving his eyes to the caption, he squeaked in surprise. "He's my boyfriend, and I'm very lucky he puts up with me." Footsteps draw his teary attention away from his phone to the man standing in the doorway. Kaminari holds his arms open and makes grabby hands, and Bakugou chuckles fondly as he makes his way over to glomp down on him, burying him into the couch with the force of his weight from the all-encompassing hug. "I love you," Kaminari whispers, and Bakugou's breath catches in his throat. He leans back to give Kaminari room to breathe and just looks at him. Since he had come back from the mission to find Kami broken and bruised, it had usually been Bakugou saying "I love you" first. And Kaminari always reciprocated, because he still loved Bakugou despite everything. But he had become a lot more wary with his affection, a bit more reserved. This moment, as tears sprung to Bakugou's eyes and he buried himself in Kaminari's neck, felt like a milestone. It felt like they were making progress. And that progress meant more to Bakugou than any hero ranking could ever. Once the bags were packed, lists were checked, and Kaminari's bags were repacked after a thorough check by Bakugou and missing items added, they were off. The excited energy buzzing around Kaminari was enough to make even Bakugou smile, watching him run off ahead of him, not knowing where he was going, but pausing every few minutes to stand still and wait for him to catch up. Well, standing as still as Kami can possibly when he was trying to get Bakugou to move faster. "Come on, you have to show me where we're going, which means you need to be faster than me." He was bouncing on his heels, his rolling luggage behind him and backpack that Bakugou knew was heavy since he finished packing it, barely making a dent on the endless fountain of his energy. "Shouldn't you know where to go? You're an adult. If I'm such an adult, why don't you give me my ticket?" Kaminari asks, holding a hand out in front of him as Bakugou catches up. He scoffs, "No way, you'll lose it." Not upset in the slightest, Kaminari shoots him a brilliant smile. "Well then I am not an adult and you need to hurry up and show me where to go." This time he grabs him by the hand, dragging him along. A part of Bakugou wants to slow down just to tease Kami, but they do have somewhere to be and shoving Kaminari into a bathroom stall just to taste that pout will definitely make them late. With an increased urgency to make it to their rooms aboard the cruise, it takes them no time at all to get in line and make their way on board. And if Bakugou sneaks a picture of Kaminari's odd face as he stares up at the ship, he'll just keep that to himself. For now, he'll post it on his socials later, just so that he can show off how cute his fiancé, his boyfriend, is to everyone. Once in their rooms, Kaminari is busy choosing an outfit for the party happening on the deck while they take off. Bakugou lays back on the bed, his outfit an easy pair of slacks and tight-fitting button-up, indulging himself while watching Kaminari dress, strip, and strip once more while he determines the best outfit. Golden eyes land on him once he finally makes his decision, amusement glowing in them as he watches Bakugo's eyes travel over him. Enjoying the show over there? Yeah, and I'll enjoy the encore tonight when we get back even more. His heart squeezes at the uninhibited laugh Kami lets out, head thrown back and smile wide. Then they're downstairs in a crowd of people, drinks in hand and swaying to the music while the port fades into the distance. Bakugo leans down to ghost his lips over Kami's ear in a way he knows makes him loose and pliable. I know it's taken too long, but I'm so happy to be here with you. Kaminari spins in his arms, managing not to spill a single drop of his drink, and smiles up at him even as the rest of the crowd keeps their eyes on the fading lights of the shore. I'm happy to be here, too. More than you know. I love you. Tears spring to Kami's eyes and a light shock travels between the two of them, the faint glow of golden eyes as his power slips from his control as his emotions rise. For someone with such an ironclad grip on his powers, Bakugo is proud to be the only thing that can cause Kaminari to struggle to hold it together. I love you too. Their beep as the crowd around them cheers for the beginning of an exciting new journey is electric and sweet, speaking of so much more to come. There is so much to do on the cruise, and going very much against his own nature, Bakugo had not made them a schedule for the vacation, only getting reservations for a few of the popular things that he was worried would be booked too quickly if they waited, like the fancy restaurant and live singing performance. The rest of their time on the cruise, they were just going to wing it. Which is exactly where Kaminari thrives. Come on, the pictures of the pool online looked amazing, I'm dying to try it out. Kaminari has a tight grip on Bakugo's hand, and even though his hands are so small he needs both to fully grip one of Bakugo's, he doubts he could easily shake him off. Not that he would want to. Trailing after Kaminari while he wears a pair of tight swim trunks and a mesh crop top, he can't think of a single other place he would rather be. And the brilliant smile on his face as he turns and looks up at him makes something so soft in Bakugo's chest, even as other parts of him want to get hard. The cute and sexy mix that Kaminari effortlessly exudes is going to be the death of Bakugo someday soon. As soon as they arrive at one of the pools that is sparsely occupied, Kami is forcing Bakugo to help him rub sunscreen on his back and shoulders. But the moment Bakugo's touches go from functional to indulgent, fingers gripping at his waist and lingering on his shoulders, Kaminari steps away and scolds him teasingly before snagging the open sunscreen and giving Bakugo a similar treatment. After waiting a whole 20 minutes for the sunscreen to set. You're being dramatic, we can just go jump in now. When you get sunburnt you aren't allowed to complain. You're no fun. The two of them left their bags and shirts behind and slipped into the shallow end of the pool. Kaminari looks radiant, giggling and pushing weakly at Bakugo's hands as he pulls him in deeper with him. But my hair will get wet. It's a pool, you knew your hair would get wet. Fine, but you're not allowed to dunk me. Kami says, booping the end of Bakugo's nose as he's held in his arms, his own feet no longer touching the bottom even as Bakugo is still able to stand. Choking on chlorine water is not a cute look. Don't worry, I'll wait until we're back in our rooms before I give you something to choke on. Bakugo smirks as Kami smacks his shoulder, his feet finally leaving the bottom of the pool as they both start to float. They continue like that for a while, just floating and chatting, before the pool clears out fully and Bakugo says he wants to swim a few laps. Of course you would turn a fun activity into a form of exercise, Kami tells him, but he doesn't look upset. Completely the opposite actually, he looks so fond, hands resting on Bakugo's shoulders and smile unwavering. Bring me to the side of the pool and help me out, I'll go to the bar and grab myself a drink while I watch you. Bakugo obliged, slowly making his way over to the edge of the pool before lifting Kami up to sit down on the edge. Kami leaned down to press a soft beep to his forehead before getting up, water dripping off him. He takes a moment to watch Kaminari as he pads over to their stuff, toweling himself dry quickly and walking over to the bar. Then Bakugo pushes off the side of the pool, pacing himself as he swims back and forth. It's making him use muscles he didn't even realize weren't being properly exercised, and he starts to come up with a list in his head of the different things he'll need to research before trying to add swimming in along with the rest of his exercise routine. Maybe Deku would want to join him, but then it would turn into a race. Sue would be the best bet, as she would have the knowledge to correct his form and give him pointers. After several laps, Bakugou decides to call it quits, knowing that their activities tonight back at the room will also leave his muscles sore. As he climbs out on the stairs at the shallow end, he notices Kaminari back at the bar, this time grabbing a refill of his own flowery, tropical beverage as well as a water bottle. He must have noticed Bakugou getting out and decided to get him some water. Flutters in his chest remind Bakugou that the love between them has never really left that honeymoon phase, still so infatuated with each other, the emotions strong and unignorable, as excitable as schoolgirls in love. As he dries himself off, he watches as Kaminari takes the drinks from the bartender, turning and making his way back, a smile growing as his eyes trail over Bakugou as he hangs the towel over his shoulders. But before he can reach him, a woman who must have just arrived at the pool steps forward, saying something to Kaminari with a flirtatious smile. She's really cranked it up to 10, leaning forward to blink up through her lashes at him, arms squeezing her beeps together to try and give Kami a good view, and Bakugou is pissed but can't blame her. His eyes trail over Kami. He's glowing, a faint tan starting to build up after more days out in the sun, hair still a bit wet and framing his face nicely, eyes bright and smile so welcoming. Anyone would want to shoot their shot to get a piece of that. But his boyfriend is oblivious with a lack of self-awareness, and never notices when people are flirting with him, normally doesn't think anyone would want to flirt with him, and that word grates against Bakugou. Boyfriend. He had more, and then he went and ate it up. And damn it if he isn't going to earn the right to call Kami his fiancée again. Kaminari should have a ring on his finger right now, and that should be warding off most interested parties. But he doesn't, so it isn't, and Bakugou will just have to do it the direct way. Kami's eyes haven't strayed away from the woman's face, not noticing at all what she is trying to do. He happily chats back, gesturing over his shoulder to the bar behind him. When he notices Bakugou approaching, his smile takes on a softer, more love-struck look. And if that doesn't send a feeling of calm through Bakugou, any anger and jealousy that had been growing leaking out as he walks over and stands behind Kami, wrapping one arm across his shoulders to pull him back into his chest, letting him continue his conversation while he plays on his phone. Kaminari is leaning back into Bakugou's chest while he talks, but he slows to a stop, making Bakugou glance up when he asks, "Are you all right?" The woman's face is beet red, hands covering her mouth which is split into a wide, almost disbelieving smile. Bakugou can't help but chuckle and press a beep to Kami's temple, who makes a questioning sound as the woman squeals in glee before running off. "I think she may have realized who we are," Bakugou whispers to Kami, taking the water from his hand and leading him back to their chairs. "Ooh," Kami nods in agreement, sitting down and sipping his drink. "Yeah, I'm sure no one on board was expecting to see heroes on their vacation." He sends him a pleased smile. "But I have the best boyfriend in the world, so of course we're on a cruise." "Boyfriend. Anything for you, baby." Over the next few days, they get to do a whole bunch of things. Some days were spent at the pool, either in it or reading on the lounge chairs, some spent in their rooms getting lost in each other, or playing the different games available on the decks. The cruise will sometimes stop at different touristy locations, and Kaminari will drag Bakugou along behind him, wearing a cute sun hat and making friends with the locals. One of Kami's favorite things to do was go to the party held nearly every night, where he got to dress up all sexy to drink and dance. The main event on those nights normally started once they were back to their room, however, which is what Bakugou's favorite part of the night was. One of the things Bakugou booked ahead of time was the fancy restaurant on board. Some bougie, 5-star chef that was doing some fancy seafood 8-course meal. If he was being honest with himself, it was one of the things he was most looking forward to on this cruise, something that Kaminari probably would have skipped on his own. It was definitely a surprise that as he finished putting on his tie, Kaminari stepped out of the bathroom wearing a floor-length dress and heels. Bakugou was so shocked he dropped his suit jacket, jaw hanging open as Kaminari spun in a circle. "How do I look?" It was a tight-fitting dress in the top with thin straps holding it up, hugging tight to his waist and hips before dropping down to a loose floor-length skirt with a slit up to the thigh on his left leg. It was black with yellow accents, and was matched with black gloves that went up to mid-bicep. Elegant and sleek, looking more like he could be on the arm of a rich politician at a state dinner rather than going to eat on a cruise with Bakugou. You look, Denki, where did that dress come from? Kaminari did a happy little dance, staring at himself in the mirror. I snuck it into my bags after you finished packing them. I wanted to surprise you. Consider me surprised, Bakugou tells him, stepping forward to pull him into his arms. He leans in to beep him before Kami turns his face away. Don't mess up my makeup. A closer look shows off the pale pink lipstick and glitter eyeliner around those gold eyes Bakugou loves so much. It makes them look big and innocent, and the urge to beep him grows. But he's learned his lesson before about beeping Kami after a request to not mess up his makeup, and even the number one hero will not knowingly bring that wrath down on himself. Besides, Kami paints such a beautiful picture. The idea of showing him off at dinner sits well with Bakugou, knowing he's the only one who will get to wreck him after. Come on then, let's go. The restaurant is fancy, with crystal chandeliers and gold utensils. Bakugou holds Kami's chair out for him, eyes lingering on the exposed expanse of his back while he sits down. But once the food starts coming out, Bakugou is completely distracted. It's all delicious, even if the portions are small. He gets so distracted by tasting the food and trying to understand how they made it, asking the waiter for details and jotting down notes on an app in his phone like Deku, he doesn't even notice that he hasn't spoken a word to Kami and their meal is half over. A quick glance up to Kaminari shows him with a peaceful smile that Bakugou is surprised to see. Kami is leaning his chin on one hand, elbow propped on the table, glass of wine held in his other hand while he smiles and watches Bakugou like there is no other place on the earth that he wants to be. Enjoying the food. Yeah, it's really good. His boyfriend's eyes turn into cute little crescents as his smile grows, nothing more than pure joy radiating from him, all because Bakugou is enjoying himself. A fondness grows inside Bakugou as he smiles back at Kami, the two of them leaning back as the waiter takes their empty plates and refills their glasses before the next course. It almost feels like a punch to the gut while he enjoys the rest of their meal, still taking notes and still bothering the wait staff to ask for more details on how the food is cooked, but now he's glancing up at Kaminari between each bite. Watching as Kami eats his own food, no doubt enjoying it because it's amazing but seeming to find more joy in how much fun Bakugou is having. And don't get it twisted, Kaminari has shown again and again how much he loves Bakugou, and is no stranger to voicing it out loud. But in that moment, Bakugou has never felt so strongly that he is loved, down to his bones. Because as much as Kaminari's love language is about words of affirmation, Bakugou's is all about action. And there is nothing that can more aptly show how much someone loves you than to be caught happy while seeing them enjoy themselves. As they finished their meal and walked back to their rooms, Bakugou draped his jacket over Kami's shoulders from the chilly air on the water. He wrapped an arm around him and pulled him close to his side, knowing people were staring, and had been staring since they stepped out of their room. So Bakugou took a deep pleasure in spending the rest of the night showing Kaminari that he knew his body inside and out, and was the only one who could love him like this. With each thrust, with each confession of his love, he showed Kaminari how serious he was about them. About fixing things between them, about dedicating himself to making this work. And Kaminari gave as good as he got, the only person in the world that could push Bakugou onto his back and he'd go willingly, watching as Kami bounced and worked towards their pleasure. How he whispered his love back, and met Bakugou thrust for thrust, until the two were too tired to move. Until Kaminari fell asleep as Bakugou cleaned him up, and even after as Bakugou curled around his sleeping form, he welcomed Bakugou to him, curling up with him and humming, content. Bakugou knew no one would ever love him the way Kaminari does. And Bakugou will never love another. He's come to this conclusion before, but he's grown and learned since then. He was going to marry Denki, if Denki would have him. In the last few days of their vacation, Kaminari has been more inclined to drag Bakugou back into their bed than sit out on the deck and watch the waves. So it was a rare morning that they decided to get breakfast in the dining room around the busiest times, Kaminari walking with a slight limp but happier than Bakugou has seen him in a long while. His hair had become lighter and skin tanner under the bright sun on the cruise, and he held Bakugou's hand tight as he weaved through the crowd towards the smell of bacon. And sure, he was on vacation, but maybe his eyes were too glued to Kami's ass because he almost plowed him over when Kami came to a dead stop. There was a split second that he panicked when that hand slipped from his own and the love of his life darted through the crowd, but only a second later Bakugou could hear the cries that must have gotten his attention. Once he's able to make his way through the crowd, his bulk making it more difficult than Kami had been able to, he saw his boyfriend crouched down in front of a small girl, a calming smile on his face as he got down to eye level with her. "Hi, I'm a hero. My hero name is Chargebolt. Do you know me?" The little girl shakes her head no. "That's all right, you may know my boyfriend here. He's the #1 hero in Japan, Ground Zero." The little girl's eyes travel up to see Bakugou standing behind Kami, and her eyes grow wide as she gasps. It's quickly followed by a frown, her brows pinched as she says, "Prove it." Bakugou grunts in begrudging approval. Smart kid. He kneels down next to Kami and holds out a palm, letting a few small explosions pop off of his hand. Her eyes grow wide, and it's clear she has determined the two of them safe. She steps forward and grips the sleeve of Kami's jacket, staring up at him with big eyes. "I'm Momo. Well, it's very nice to meet you. So who are you here with, Momo? Any family or friends?" She gives a single nod. "My dad's." "That's great." While Kami chats with her, Bakugou stands and looks at the crowd around them. He doesn't see any men that look like they're searching for someone. Kaminari keeps talking with her. "Have you been having a nice family vacation?" She gives another vehement nod, before pausing to think. "Until I got lost." "Don't worry, we've got you. You're not lost anymore. Bakugou knows exactly where we are, so you can't be lost if you're with people that can help you get places. We just need to let your dads know where you are." Kami stands up and holds his hand out to encourage her to hold hands. "Why don't we find a staff member of the ship to have them call for your parents over the loudspeaker?" She nods her head, holding her arms up to be carried. Kaminari giggles and leans down to lift her up, face glowing as she leveraged both her hands on his shoulders to try and look around the crowd. "All right, let's find one of the crew and see about making an announcement looking for your parents." Bright golden eyes turn to Bakugou, silently asking him to take the lead. And so with a dramatic sigh he does, wandering through the crowd, ignoring the grumbling in his stomach as he keeps a sharp eye out for an employee, being sure to look back and check on the two of them as they go. Kaminari seems like such a natural around her, both listening avidly whenever she told him a story of her family's vacation, while also chatting happily whenever she asked questions about their quirks, or jobs as heroes. Eventually they found a worker and an announcement went out for her parents to come find them. Kaminari sat next to her and continued to listen and chat while they waited, keeping her distracted from how sad she had been earlier. Bakugou couldn't take his eyes off of Kami. He seemed so in his element handling someone so young, able to not only keep up but keep pace with the abrupt changes of topic and long rambling explanations that, to Bakugou, never connected to the topic fully. There was something so gentle about his boyfriend, and Bakugou realized he had never really seen him interact with a kid before. And that, though Kami being good at anything shouldn't surprise him anymore, he really was a natural. And maybe the prospect of being parents wouldn't be so scary, since they would be doing it together. His musings were interrupted by two frantic-looking men that rushed over, that Momo shouted, "Daddies!" at before jumping into their arms. There was a lot of, "Thank you," and, "Our pleasure," tossed around, but Bakugou had checked out. Better to let Kami handle the civilians. But as they said their goodbyes to part ways, Bakugou squatted down to eye level with Rin, and gave her a pat on the head. "You did good, kid." From the corner of his eye, he could see Kami awing away with her parents, but he focused on the little shoulders that started to shake as tears welled up in her eyes. She dove forward for a quick hug, which Bakugou had barely a second to return before Rin pulled away and wiped her tears. "Thank you." And then it was back to just the two of them, Kaminari happy as a clam as they made their way back to breakfast. Coming home from vacation might normally be viewed as a bad thing, but after 2 weeks of Bakugou proving to Kaminari how serious he was about doing better by him, Kami was excited to get back to their lives. Nothing had changed, and yet it felt like everything had. Their morning routines are still the same, but filled with little signs that Bakugou is thinking of him. If Bakugou leaves before him, a cup of coffee is waiting for him, warm inside of a thermos for when he finally crawls out of bed. Whenever Kami is the first to get up, no matter when his shift is or how long he could sleep in, Bakugou gets up with him and helps pack his lunch. The hours he works are cut back to what most people would call normal, and Kami is thrilled to cuddle up most nights on the couch and watch shows together. They even have time for multiple dates a week, taking the chance to dress up or do fun activities together. And these are mostly things Bakugou told him to expect, things they discussed and Kaminari explicitly asked for. So Kaminari is surprised when he enters the apartment to find his boyfriend in a state of distress, frantically searching the apartment. He approaches the room hesitantly. "Katsuki, is everything okay?" His boyfriend spins around with panic in his eyes, hair frazzled and severe scratch marks across his cheek. Kami gasps and rushes forward. "Kats, what happened?" Grabbing his face gently, he tilts it to get a better look. "We need to disinfect this, and get it bandaged right now." Bakugou melts at his touch, leaning forward and pressing their foreheads together. "You're worth it all, Denks, you know that." Puzzled, Kami leans back and starts to ask him what he means when he hears a loud meow from the couch. And every worry disappears from Kaminari's mind when he spots 2 black kittens, one peeking out from behind the couch, the other from behind a pillow. He lets out a shocked gasp, darting around his boyfriend and crouching low to the ground. "Hello there, aren't you both beautiful?" Both are black cats. The kitten behind the pillow has a surprisingly symmetrical white diamond shape across its face, while the kitten on the floor hiding at the side of the couch has white patches on its feet that look like little mittens. From behind him, he hears Bakugou grumble, "What about taking care of my cuts?" But he pays no mind as the 2 kittens carefully come out from hiding and move towards Kaminari. He leaves his hands in front of him for them to come closer and explore, and before long they're rolling around letting Kami pet them, tummies up and meowing away. "Of course they love you already." Kami looks up at Bakugou with tears in his eyes, already expecting the wide, unashamed smile that he's wearing as he leans against the wall watching. "Do they have names?" "Oh yeah, and as soon as I heard then I knew you had to have them. They were such little shits at the shelter that they named them the Shenanigan Brothers, hijinks and tomfoolery." Kaminari lets out a wet laugh at that as the kittens crawl up onto him to get closer, begging for pets and attention. "I feel a bond already, they're my people." Bakugou walks over to press a gentle beep to Kami's forehead, ignoring the indignant meows from the little shits. Kami closes his eyes and soaks in the attention, only turning back to the kittens when Bakugou steps away to clean his cuts in the bathroom. They each have a collar, one yellow and one orange, the tags in the shape of Ground Zero and Chargebolt's logos, their names engraved on the back. "Are they both chipped?" "Yeah, got their shots and neutered too." Kami pulls the 2 of them close, giggling at how floppy and well-behaved they are. "We need to go shopping for them." Bakugou stepped out, clean bandage on his face. "I've got food, auto feeders and a self-changing litter box. But figured you would want to pick out the toys and stuff." He sets the kittens down and stands while they wrestle with each other, patting over to his boyfriend and beeping him gently. "How do we even have pets? I thought the landlord said no." "I went and asked again. Turns out being the #1 hero means he felt he could trust me." Kami raised an eyebrow in disbelief. Bakugou shrugged. "That and withholding our deposit if there's any excessive damage from them." Kaminari places the kittens back down on the couch, standing and walking over to Bakugou. His boyfriend pauses what he's doing to glance down at him, hands coming to rest on his waist as Kami enters his space. "I can't tell you how much this means to me. I knew it meant a lot to you. That's why I did it." Bakugou's nose brushes across Kami's cheek, and Kami takes a deep breath, smelling the familiar scent of his shampoo and feeling every muscle in his body fully relax for the first time today. The sound of soft meows in the background makes him smile. Life is getting better each and every day. There comes a time when Bakugou realizes they are ready to try again. It's been over a year and things are even better between him and Kaminari than they were before he left on that mission. And the most important part, he thinks, is how easy it has been being better. Things that he used to think would be difficult, like cutting down on work hours and taking care of pets, spending more time away from his job, less time thinking about how to keep that number one spot from Deku's grubby little hands, and more time cuddling with, talking with, and bending Kaminari over every surface possible has been easy and amazing. Sometimes he doesn't know why it took so long for him to realize these were all things he wanted, and now he's ready to take things even further. He has a realtor looking for homes in Siro's neighborhood, and even though Bakugou has high standards, he thinks he'll be able to find something soon and surprise Kaminari with a walkthrough for his approval before they sign the mortgage together. And that brings Bakugou to this last thing. Kaminari just left for patrol this morning, and Bakugou takes out a small box from his closet that holds the engagement ring for Kaminari. He's only opened this once since he put it away after it was returned to him, but he thought about it almost daily. He knew they were ready, because he felt ready. And Kaminari would already know that, because somehow that discount lightning rod understood Bakugou better than he understood himself. So he pulled out his phone and dialed a number he knew would be all too happy to help. "Hey Ponytail, I've got a favor to ask." "Come on Bakugou, we'll be late," Kaminari shouts, rushing around the house trying to find his boyfriend. In just 30 minutes they needed to be at the Class A reunion Yaomomo was throwing for everyone. She had sprung it on them, saying that she was in the mood to host and wanted to get everyone together, even the teachers. Everyone was using it as an excuse to get dressed up and more than a little tipsy. Kaminari had been looking forward to this for weeks, especially in the custom suit Bakugou's parents had made for him as a fun project while they were between collections. Nothing was going to make him late, especially not Bakugou digging around in his closet at the last minute. He swings into their room as the explosive blonde is leaving, bumping into each other. "Careful, baby," Bakugou tells him in a husky tone, one hand settling on his shoulder while the other slips under his jacket to hold his waist, steadying him. Kami blinks up at him, brain slowly turning over the words and tone they were said in as his face grows more red, his pants a bit tighter than they had been before. Bakugou merely smirks and slides his hands off of him, moving gently past him and down the hall. The noises tell Kami that he is at the front door, but his brain is still trying to restart from the shock of arousal his boyfriend had just nonchalantly shot through him. "Waiting on you now." Kami blinks in surprise before his face twists into an indignant pout. "No, you can't turn this on me, you were the one taking long." Amusement is clear in his voice as Bakugou replies. "Well, now one of us is at the front door with their shoes on waiting, and it isn't you." When Kami reaches the front door he sees the soft smile on Bakugou's face and can't help but return it with his own. "You look good. So do you." The grin his boyfriend shoots him is full of promise. "Come on, the sooner we get there the sooner we can get back home and out of these clothes." Insatiable, I swear, most everyone has arrived by the time they are welcomed into Yaomomo and Jiro's large home. It's tastefully decorated, and well stocked with delicious-looking food and drinks. But before he even thinks about the food, Kaminari is taking the chance to drag every single person he sees, with few exceptions, into a hug. Most return his hugs with equal or lesser enthusiasm, but some of their former classmates, Tokiyami and Jiro, merely suffer through it. He's also delighted and surprised to see so many of Class B as well as teachers and pro heroes milling around, rushing over to a familiar face sitting drinking tea. "Principal Nezu, hi, you're looking radiant as always. Now, Kaminari, you're no longer a student at UA. There's no need to bribe me with compliments." Gasping, Kami covers his heart with his hand. "I would never bribe you with words. Money speaks much louder." "Too bad you were broke back then," Bakugou murmurs, wrapping an arm around his waist and pressing a beep to his head to lessen the betrayal. "Making sure you and the others graduated gave me every gray hair I have today." Aizawa-sensei. The night continues on much of the same, and Kaminari gets swept away in the happiness of having all of the people he cares about most together in one place. The ring box is burning a hole in Bakugou's pocket and he isn't even holding it right now. Kaminari has stuck to his side like glue quite literally, so Bakugou had to pass it over to Kirishima as stealthily as possible so as to not have Kaminari feel it when he's pressed against him so tightly. The only people that knew about Kami and Bakugou's engagement the first time are in this room, even his parents, who are hiding in the back and waiting for him to take the stage. They had never gone public with the engagement, more for just the privacy of it considering most of their lives are already out there for the public to see, which honestly turned out for the best, considering how badly Bakugou had messed up. He can imagine the old hag muttering about him being too much of a coward for making her wait so long, but that thought doesn't exactly inspire him. He's working up the courage to walk to the microphone at the front of the room that Ponytail so conveniently needed to address the room at the beginning of the night, but before he can do anything a very drunk round face has stumbled her way up to it. The speech that follows is extremely slurred, but heartfelt, telling everyone how much she loves them and misses them all the time. Especially her girlfriend, who is still on house arrest and can't be here, but round face misses her the most. To everyone's amusement and many giggles, Deku helps escort her back to a seat where Glasses is waiting with water for her, a lecture prepared about staying hydrated when drinking excessive amounts of alcohol. Apparently feeling inspired, a few other students walk to the mic and give less slurred words of praise and heartfelt love for their friends and teachers. Something Kami was still giggling at even 10 minutes later was Present Mike's attempt to get to the microphone, not as drunk as Round Face but certainly on his way there, before his husband's capture scarf shot out and pulled his aggressively back down onto his chair. Monoma was also stopped from getting up as well, although more than one person leapt up to hold him back. Kaminari turns to Bakugou and whispers, "I think I wanna go do that too." And now he has something to motivate him. "Mind if I go first? What I say will be awful in comparison to whatever you do." His boyfriend's face practically blooms, happiness and love in every inch of his gaze as he smiles at Bakugou and pushes him up from his seat. Of course, go. The good best friend that he is, Kirishima sees Bakugou getting up and stands up himself, meeting him on his walk over and patting him on the shoulder in support while slipping the ring box into his coat pocket and walking over to take Bakugou's place next to Kami as he reached the microphone to loud cheers. "I know I was a little shit when we started high school," Bakugou started to a raucous amount of laughter. Kaminari was giggling away, and he couldn't help but smirk at that. "I was full of myself, and couldn't have asked for a better group of people to help me grow." In the back of the room, Midoriya and drunk Ochako are already holding each other sobbing, a misty-eyed Iida patting their heads. "And I haven't stopped growing and learning just because we graduated high school. Not only as a hero, but as a partner, too." Kaminari perks up at that, eyes bright and proud. His boyfriend smiles softly at him, and Bakugou can't help but feel courage surge through him. "I know I've made a lot of mistakes, not just small mistakes but big ones. And somehow, when anyone else would have given up on me, you believed I could do better and stuck by me." Some of the others in the room realize what is happening, Siro giving him a big thumbs up and Mina jumping up and down, her hand on Kaminari's shoulder and pushing him forward, closer to the front of the room so he can join Bakugou up on stage. As soon as they're next to each other, Kami's neck tilts up to stare at Bakugou with tears in his eyes. He drops to one knee, barely even focusing on the fact that Mina grabs the mic and holds it next to him so the room can still hear. "I know I haven't done enough to deserve you, because you have stuck by me when I was at my worst and still loved me." Kami's hands are covering his mouth as he sobs, eyes still trained on his boyfriend. "But I want the chance to prove to you every day for the rest of our lives that I will be there to support you, to love you, and create a life together that we are both proud of." He pulls the ring box from his pocket and pops it open, blinking away his own tears as he says softly, "Denki, will you marry me?" Mina moves the mic to Kaminari, who uncovers his mouth to whisper out erect, "Yes." The room bursts into cheers as Bakugou gently takes Kaminari's hand and slides the ring onto his finger. As soon as it's on, his fiancé throws himself into his arms, causing them to nearly tip over. But Bakugou has always been sturdy, trained hard for his job as a hero, and he had come to realize recently that he could provide that to Denki as well. So he clings to him, Feeling such strong emotions course through him until the two of them are surrounded and he pulls Kaminari with him to their feet to be passed around and hugged by all their friends. Although many of them have already seen the ring before, Hagakure squeals, "Let us see that bling." And an odd gasp ripples through the group as they stare at a familiar, yet different ring. Kaminari blinks, and glances up at Bakugou. "Did you get more diamonds put on this?" Shiro snorts, shaking his head with an impressed smile. Mina pokes him in the chest, looking proud. "That's pretty smooth, Blasty. Leave it to you to turn Denki breaking off the engagement into an opportunity to shower him in riches." The rest of the night is a blur of congratulations and hugs, but every moment they are not touching Bakugou has Kaminari in his field of vision, watching as he hugs their friends and teachers, watches as Bakugou's mom and dad cry as they cling to each other. As the night winds down and people start to filter out, Bakugou finds Kaminari chatting with Kirishima and slips his arms around his waist, resting his forehead on his shoulder while the two of them finish their conversation. "Have a good night you two, congrats again." Kirishima gives Kami a hug and Bakugou a fist bump before leaving, and Bakugou takes that moment to drag Kaminari out of the event and back towards their car. Bakugou stops next to the passenger door and opens the door for Kami, turning and giving him a smile when he sees the peace and happiness shining in his eyes. "So, fiancés." He chuckles, "Yeah, Firefly, I figured it was time to get my act together." He leans forward, arm braced on the roof of the car behind Kaminari, their noses brushing from how close they are. "Whatever you want, if I can give it to you, then I will." "Just you," Kami whispers, his breath fanning across Bakugou's lips. "All I've ever wanted is to spend my life with you." Bakugou hums, bridging the small gap between them to press their lips together. His free hand reaches out to grab Kaminari's, fingers brushing over the ring there. Forever with him sounds perfect. To be continued. I hope you enjoyed this story. Also remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.